All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I have the honor of gaveling in the session this morning, and just want to thank you all for being here today. I'm Curtis Leggett. I'm the president and CEO of the National Association of Broadcasters. This is our home. It's actually our new home. We opened this facility in the midst of COVID in May of 2020. So it's really only been over the last couple of months that we've been able to host these types of events. And it is just such a pleasure to host this particular event. NAB has a long partnership with Chile. I want to thank President and CEO Marianne Gomez, who is just doing tremendous work. And we share your mission of developing future leaders that represent the diversity of our communities and are amplifying the voices of the marginalized Latino communities. From a broadcast perspective, our members are meeting the moment. You know, we're ensuring in this climate of social media disinformation, cable news politicization, that trusted local voices are penetrating. And for the communities that you represent, which often over-index on broadcast and are overly victimized by social media disinformation, we're ensuring that trusted local voices that are bringing communities together rather than dividing them are amplified. And we're working on that here at the NAB every day and greatly appreciate this partnership. I'm just honored to have all of you here. I think you got a great program in store today. This commitment to bringing young leaders together, ensure that they are educated on so many of the issues going on here in Washington, D.C. that are so relevant to your communities, and building this relationship from the ground up is one that we absolutely support and look forward to doing whatever we can at NAB to help support the mission. So with that, again, just want to welcome you here today. You've got a great agenda, members of Congress, and anything that we can do to help support this dialogue, please continue the relationship, and we look forward to the ongoing partnership.
Good morning. I'm Mauricio Villacres, and I'm Chile Programs and Strategic Partnerships Manager. It is my pleasure to do the second welcome to the annual Future Leaders Conference hosted by the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute. Whether you're joining us in person or watching via Zoom, we encourage you to engage in conversation through social media. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the Chile. Please use the hashtag #ShapeYourFuture. We asked you to help us share the speakers' points of views as well as your own. The program is being recorded and will be available on Chile's YouTube channel in 2 weeks. If you're tuning in virtually, use the chat to feature with everyone where you're joining from and what university you attend, share and connect with others. After each panel discussion, there will be time for questions and answers. We will take 2 questions from the in-person audience and 2 from the Zoom audience. To participate in our Q&A portion, please submit your questions to the Q&A feature, not the chat. And now please join me in welcoming Jennifer Cortez, Equity Specialist with Ford Motor Company Fund, who will share with us her remarks on behalf of Ford Motor Company.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. Thank you, Mauricio, for that warm welcome. It's a wonderful honor to be here in Washington, D.C. I'm a Texas native, so I flew up here from Dallas, and I'm happy to be, go Texas, right? Happy to be here today. I want to, of course, start off by thanking Chairman Lincoln Diaz-Balart and Chile's President and CEO Marianne Gomez, as well as the Honorable Eliana Ross, and for your outstanding dedication to promoting leadership and education among young people. To all the members of Congress who will be with us throughout today, we are inspired by their commitment to empower future leaders. And of course, I sincerely thank all the members of the Chile staff. Mauricio, who is up here, Maite, Emily, your hard work to make this event a success is seen, and we thank you for that. As the philanthropic arm of Ford Motor Company, our mission is to strengthen communities and help make people's lives better. We do this by providing access to opportunities and resources that will help people reach their full potential. We're here today because we know that education is the foundation to success. It is the key in making lives better, creating social change, and building sustainable communities. We believe the best way to learn is by doing, by taking classroom or textbook knowledge and applying it to the real world. We are proud to support Chile's efforts to provide young leaders with world-class internship experiences and powerful connections, propelling them to leave a positive mark on our world. Growing up in Texas, I know firsthand the importance of making sure that we create a future where younger generations can experience career paths that open opportunities beyond their neighborhood and the wider world. Since 1949, Ford Fund has invested more than $2.2 billion to build stronger communities all around the world through organizations like Chile. Our work is rooted in Ford's longstanding commitment to making a positive impact in society and building on Henry Ford's legacy of helping create strong communities wherever Ford does business. We're here because we believe in you. And we are committed to investing in the future leaders of tomorrow. Our country needs your creativity, your innovation, and your positive contribution to this world. So thank you all for being here, especially our future leaders, because y'all are taking the time to do what is the important work. And it is my hope that by the end of today, you leave feeling empowered, positive, and fully supported by Chile, by Ford, and by all of the leaders that you see today. It is a privilege to be part of this community. Thank you very much. Gracias a todo. I look forward to getting to know everyone throughout the day.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marianne Gomez-Horta, President and CEO of the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute, also known as CHLI. So thank you all for being here. As mentioned, and I believe Jennifer touched on this as well, part of the leadership is showing up, right? So we always talk about making sure that you have an opportunity to meet each other, learn from each other, share, and the first step is showing up. So thank you very much for being here in person and via Zoom. I want to be able to, I'm waiting for Curtis, the CEO, to come back, and hopefully we can get him back so we can take a picture. He left on me a little too quick. So hopefully we can get him back. I'd like to go ahead and next and introduce our next speaker to kind of kick this off. Before I do, I've got a couple of other little remarks here. The conference prepares leaders by convening over 100 students, interns, and young professionals, congressional staff, corporate executives, and community leaders to learn, shape, and connect. We bring together members of Congress, as has been mentioned, distinguished corporate, government, and nonprofit leaders to share inspirational stories and journeys. And through discussions, we encourage and promote public service, leadership, and entrepreneurship among today's and tomorrow's young adults, young leaders like many of you in this room. CHLI is the premier organization founded by members of Congress to advance the Hispanic community's economic progress with a focus on social responsibility and global competitiveness. CHLI is a leadership development organization at the core, and we prepare, connect, and honor leaders. We prepare future leaders through internships, fellowships, scholarships, and leadership conferences. So if you have not already taken the time, if you're interested in an internship or a fellowship, please check out our website for more information. And we have some of the interns and fellows here as well, who you will have a chance to meet later today. We also connect leaders through congressional briefings here in Washington, with forums with members of Congress, the CHLI Future Leaders Conference is this one here. We also have a trade and international affairs symposium during Hispanic Heritage Month, and you'll also meet members of the Chile Alumni Association. This is why this conference is really important to us. This is where it all starts for us. I'd like to thank our sponsors who support and contribute to this conference, as well as to other activities throughout the year. But specifically for today, Charter Communications, Chevron, Ford Motor Company, GSK Consumer Healthcare, and McDonald's. I'd also like to thank our partners, who you'll have a chance to meet later today. We're going to have some information tables with a bunch of other information for you. That's American Enterprise Institute, Accenture, Hispanics Forward, and the Wendy Martinez Legacy Project. So thank you again for your support. Today, there will be, as I mentioned, individual speakers, a panel on career opportunities, and a discussion on civic engagement. We will close the program with a presentation of a very special award called the Wendy Martinez Chile Alumni Community Engagement Award. A reminder that this is a place to share and learn from people who may have different points of view. So please be open to learn and be respectful with your comments and questions. We have also noted where all the speakers today have earned their college degrees. Why? Because it's important that you know where everybody came from, where everybody studied and what their majors were. And some of them, what their majors are still in this process. Before I pass it on to our wonderful next speaker, I also want to take the time to recognize, because everybody has bosses. I got to recognize all my bosses who are here first. So when she comes up, we'll take a picture with her first as well. But the other board member is here is Laquita Anderson. Thank you for joining, dear, from Brownstein, a top lobbying firm in Washington, D.C. So in case you want to learn anything else about lobbying or education, you'll get the chance to meet her a little bit more later today. And I think the other one is the one I'm going to introduce to come up next. So this is a very special treat for us. Please join me in welcoming a CHLI founding member. She is a current corporate board member, so she, is having so much fun, she decided to stay. She chairs our We Belong Scholarship Campaign Committee, the Honorable Ileana Ros-Layton. And as she makes her way up, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about her. So in 1989, okay, I know some of you don't remember 1989, but bear with me, okay? Yeah, well, hell, I remember it because I have a very specific story about it. So in 1989, Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Layton became the first Cuban American and the first Latina to be elected to Congress. Let that sink in for a little bit. That's also the same year I graduated from college. I graduated from the University of Pacific in Stockton, California. She served on the very prestigious House Foreign Affairs Committee. She is a proud alumna of Florida International University, where she earned her bachelor's and her master's degree. And she's also an alumna of the University of Miami, where she earned her EDD. And that's like the same as a PhD, but she's a teacher at heart. She started as a teacher and she can tell you all about that. She is also one of the 3 members of Congress who founded this organization in 2003, along with Congressman Lincoln Diaz-Balart and Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart, who you'll have a chance to meet later today. So before you speak, I'm going to ask the other boss, Laquita, to come up here, dear, so we can take a picture. And Jennifer, if you can please join us back. Yes. So from my Zoom participants, please bear with us. We love pictures here in Washington, D.C. And so we're going to pause every now and then to make sure we get a group shot. So yeah, so let's just scoot on over a little bit over here. Okay, and then just over. Come on. From any. Okay. Did you get that one? No, real quick. It takes a little. Okay, the
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so very much. I am really thrilled to be with CHLI. I always say yes to any event that CHLI has because I am so proud of the mission and the work of CHLI. Little did we know when Lincoln, Mario, and I started this organization that it would grow to be such a forceful instrument of changing young people's lives and guiding them in the right direction for a solid education, experience in the workforce, experience on Capitol Hill, experience in corporate America. And I couldn't be more proud of everything that Chile has been able to accomplish. I never thought it would be this successful and this terrific. So welcome to all of you to Chile's Future Leaders Conference. Thank you, Mary Ann, for that great introduction. She did, I'm so proud that she mentioned my schools, but she left out my pivotal education, which was 2 years in community college, Miami-Dade Community College. It was then junior college, then community college. Now it's a 4-year institution. It's just called Miami-Dade College, but community colleges. Anybody here went to community colleges? All right. So they always skip that. And I always say I got my Associate of Arts from Miami-Dade College. Community college colleges really change people's lives. But as Mary Ann pointed out, I am a founding member and I still remain very active on Chile's board. And Mary Ann is such a dynamo. I couldn't be happier with her guidance, with the help that she gives, the opportunities that she provides to young people. So let's give a big round of applause to our wonderful CEO, whatever your fancy titles are. But today's panels that you'll participate in on career opportunities and how to succeed in DC and beyond, civic engagement, all of those are closely related to my many years in public services. As Mary Ann continued to emphasize, I've been around a long time. And I was actually elected for the first time in 1982 to be a member of the Florida House of Representatives. That's where I met my future husband. And then we both went to the Florida Senate. We served in the Florida House together. We served in the Florida Senate together. And then I went to Congress and he went to become the U.S. Attorney for South Florida. But you never know what road your life will take you on. So the best thing that you can do is to stay in school, to graduate, to go to graduate school. And I was elated when I was a member of Congress to have hosted many Chile global leaders and to still participate in the Global Leaders program now as a former member. And this Future Leaders Conference is so important for all of you. I'm very proud to see the growth of Chile programs, the number of internships and opportunities that Chile offers to today's generation. And one of the aspects of Chile that I really cherish the most is its spirit of bipartisanship. We have many Hispanic serving organizations, but many times, more often than not, they're very partisan. This is Democrats or this is just for Republicans. This is a truly bipartisan organization. And you'll see that in evidence when Congressman Henry Cuellar of Texas, where's our proud Texans? Where's Jennifer? Yay, Texan. Where he'll be speaking. He's a Democrat, and Mario Diaz-Balart, a fellow Republican from South Florida. This really is a bipartisan organization. I'm so happy that Chile has it as its mission. And also diversity of thought. Right now, so many people feel marginalized. And the situation is getting a little bit better every day. It improves, but we still have a long road ahead of us. We don't see too many Hispanics on corporate boards or being involved in many aspects of American life. And so diversity is very important, but also diversity of thought so that you can have conservative voices and liberal voices, moderate voices, all intermingling and making this great organization even greater. So I congratulate Chile for fostering that feeling of diversity of thought and bipartisanship. So I'm a really old lady, as Mary Ann pointed out. I've been around a long time. I just turned 70 last week. Dios mío, coño, vieja de verdad. And I wrote down some lessons that I have learned, and this is mostly for the young ladies, because you guys, you think you own the world and that you act like you own the world. But sometimes I like to give a little bit of advice to the young ladies. Number one, you can have it all. Yes, you can, but just not all on the same day. That's what I have found. The concept is that on some days, you do what you have to do to sacrifice your work in favor of your family. But then there are other days where you sacrifice your familia in favor of your work. So yes, you can have it all, but don't think that you can have it all every day and every moment. It's hard to find that work life balance. And I think that young women are struggling with that, and your moms and your abuelas are still struggling with that as well. We might not get it right, but that's something that you want to try to get right in your life, that balance of work and your personal life. Number two, self-advocate. I say that to young ladies because sometimes we don't do enough to encourage our own selves to try to achieve the greater goal that we have in mind. You know, I have read an interesting study just last week, and it showed that women only apply for jobs where they meet almost all the suggested criteria. But males will apply even if they meet less than half of the same criteria. Men have, like in all generalities, there are exceptions, but men have this feeling that, yeah, I can get that job, sure. Chief engineer, I don't know anything about it, but I can do a good job. But as women, we're always very cautious. So be a good advocate for yourself. That's my second lesson. And I found that to be true when, as Marianne pointed out, I became chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and there were other people ahead of me. They had more seniority, a lot of guys before me, but I said, I'm gonna go for it. And I worked hard and I hustled and I did great presentation with a lot of folks helping me. And I got to be the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, the first and so far only woman chair of that committee. So I'm very proud of that, but it wouldn't have happened if I held myself back thinking, well, you know, these guys know more, they've been there longer, they deserve it. No, go for it, be your own best advocate. Number three, it really does take a village. We all depend on others. And this concept of superwoman who can achieve everything, that's a good Marvel movie. Superheroes, they only exist on the silver screen or on our iPads, but you have to become your own superwoman. You know what you want to achieve and you're gonna go for it. You're gonna try and may not be successful all the time, but be mindful that you can achieve your goals. So it does take a village. And that's leads me to my last one, which is show gratitude. Because it takes a village, even though you're going to advocate for yourself, even though you're trying to get that work-life balance, you have to show gratitude because our success really comes linked to the help that we get from others. Thank them. Thank the members of your family. Be kind to your siblings, even though you're not feeling the love some of the times when they pick on you or they don't do their chores, but be kind to others, show gratitude. And I have found that when you treat people well, they will treat you well. When you give them the respect that you would like to receive, you find that you will get that respect from them. And thank them, thank them, thank them. Have that feeling of gratitude and you will go far. So I want to thank Chile for everything that it does every day, lifting spirits of young people, giving them opportunities, work experience, and challenging them every day. Para mí siempre ha sido un placer y un tremendo honor formar parte de Chile, porque conozco bien la misión de esta organización, que es ayudar a la juventud, darles oportunidades de trabajos, de estar como interns en Capitol Hill, de avanzar sus carreras. Y lo más importante que pueden hacer ustedes es quedarse en el colegio, graduarse, porque la educación, esa es la fórmula mágica para tener éxito en la vida. So thank you so much to all of you young leaders of Chile and have a wonderful conference. Thank you, Marianne.
Yes. All right. Join me in another round of applause for our Chile madrina, Ileana Ross-Layton. Yes. All right, next, our next speaker has literally been around the world. So I'm really excited for you to get an opportunity to meet him and hear from him. Aaron Shrinian, there he is in the back. Start making your way to the front of the room, front of the classroom. He is the Senior Vice President of Global Reach with Desert Management Corporation. Aaron is a public relations and communications professional with more than 2 decades of service in the corporate, philanthropic, and diplomatic sectors. How many communications people do we have in the house? See, look it. All right, all right. He believes in the power of cutting-edge communications to help drive positive global change. Aaron manages the Global Reach portfolio for the Desert Management Corporation as part of the organization's senior executive team. He is charged with helping the diverse portfolio of media companies, communications firms, and financial organizations build and grow relationships and reach for its brands. He previously managed global communications transformation as vice president at Philip Morris International. This was a very unique role that placed him at the intersection of communications transformation for one of the largest corporations in the world as it makes the historic pivot to a smoke-free future. Lastly, he is an alum of Brigham Young University and also Johns Hopkins University. So Aaron, the floor is yours. And keep in mind, he's got time for like 1 or 2 questions. So if you've got some questions, I'm sure that Aaron will love to entertain that. So Aaron.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you,
up
Marianne.
next.
Thank you for
for
letting me
being
be here
here.
today. It's
All
a
right.
pleasure. Thank you, Marianne, and thank you for being part of a family. I think Ileana Ross-Layton mentioned that, and I have to tell you, I'm fanboying a bit to be able to be on the same program as her. Someone who, when I was in Miami and she was running the Foreign Affairs Committee and I was doing some work with a government agency, taught me a great leadership lesson. And I'm going to start with that because the leadership lesson was listen to people before you talk. And I think that that's a lot of what you're going to be doing today. You're listening, and we appreciate that. I have some things I'd like to share with you today. I'm going to go lo-fi, hi-fi on the tech, if that's okay. And I just have a couple of minutes. So I thought very, very deeply about what could I do in a room like this of the people who are, let's be frank, you're not the future leaders, you're the leaders. But what could I share that would be helpful to you? I pulled up some ideas that, frankly, I wish I'd heard earlier, and I had heard them. I just wasn't internalizing them. So I'm going to share with you just for a couple of minutes, 3 quick ideas that I hope will infect a little bit in a good way. We're in a pandemic, so you have to be careful using the term infection, right? I hope that they will infect in a good way your thinking over the next little bit. The organization that I represent, the Desert Management Corporation, believes in the power of media. And especially, as our leader from NAB taught us earlier, this is an era when media matters. And leaders, and the way that leaders intersect with media, matters more than ever. You know it. You are your own media broadcaster in small but important and big ways. And so what you do here is you talk about leadership, as you tweet about it, post about it, but as you internalize it and then speechify about it in your careers matters to everybody. So what I thought I'd share with you today, and with Marianne's permission, is 3 quick ideas. Who's running the live stream right now? Whose camera has the live stream? I can't tell. Who is it? You have it? Can't tell. All right. Okay, got it. All right, good. So I'm going to turn around my screen for a minute, just for the sake of the live stream. Here's the 3 ideas. These are the 3 ideas right here. How's this for low tech, high tech? Okay, I'm going to say it for those of you in the back of the room. Number one is do intersections, don't do lanes. Okay, we're going to talk about intersections today. I'm going to talk about embracing the collision of amazing things, because there's some amazing things happening in your career. And I think you spoke about it, Madam Chairwoman. Marianne, I think you talked about it a little bit as well. And then Marianne said it. We did not script this. The power of showing up in your career. So those are the 3 things I'm going to talk about. Now, the first one I'll go through really quickly. I grew up in Los Angeles. Anybody from that part of the world? That's my part of the world. I love Los Angeles. And growing up in my career, at your stage in your career, a lot of people said, choose your lanes carefully. Choose your career lane, choose your study lane carefully. They would show me images like this. You will make a decision that will impact your future. Truth. Important decisions are taking place right now in your education. Stay in school. Take advantage of every single opportunity, every mentor that's given you, every class that can help enrich your perspective or your worldview. Do it. What I didn't realize was that in your career, this is really what your intersections were looking like a Los Angeles freeway interchange. These were the lanes. So I was being prepared my entire career for this very linear lane idea. be very good at what you're doing. In my case, it was going to be international politics or communications or policy and advocacy. But your career is going to look like the I-10 meeting the 5, meeting the 410, meeting the 505. I don't even know what they are anymore. Your career is going to look like an LA interchange all the time. And that's the beauty of what you're going to bring. Your ability, the soft skill that everyone's talking about, everybody's talking about, is your ability to be really good at what you do and what you studied and really open to the expertise of everybody else. So please go for it. Please, absolutely. I'm about to either get edited or pause right now. We're going to see this.
So this is part of the all of the lanes here. So we have a script, we have a flow, and then we have this that comes up. So we just have Congressman Henry Cuellar who just joined. So stay here. Let me go get the congressman.
The congressman is here.
And
If
then he's
you're
gonna
about to
come
see if I
in.
can do this,
Yes,
right, in
right.
person. Can I do what I just said you should be able to do?
So we're gonna introduce him,
Okay.
and then he's gonna come and give his remarks, and then you're gonna finish and getting off the 405, and then come back on
I'm
the
going
other
to take
one.
a quick
Okay.
exit off the 405
All
and
right.
I'll be right
Okay.
back.
All
Okay,
right.
are you with me? Thank you. Thank you, Marianne. We're going to see if
So
we can
don't go
model what we're
far.
talking about. No, I'm just
Seriously,
going
don't
right
go
here. I'm
far.
going right
Okay, all right. I see him at the door. Let me see, I see him. What is he saying? That's what happens when you're here. I know, I sent you for coffee earlier, but you missed it. So now I need you up here. Aye. Good, let me formally introduce you, dear. So, okay. So as we mentioned earlier, that, we have some wonderful members of Congress who have been part of the organization. Congressman Henry Cuellar here proudly represents Texas 28th Congressional District. I know there were some Texans in the house, right? Okay. The Texans, yeah. Before, we're also mentioning where everybody got their college degrees from.
Yes.
Okay, so just so you know, because I don't always say that when I introduce you. So before going into Congress and around the same time, you'll learn this here. Before this, he earned his associate degree from Laredo Community College, which Ileana mentioned the importance of community colleges también, and later enrolled in Georgetown University. Here, while working part-time jobs to accord his graduate degree, the congressman still managed to graduate with honors cum laude. That's a big deal. I barely graduated from college, even with like 3 part-time jobs. When he returned to Texas, Congressman Cuellar completed a master's degree in international trade at Texas A&M International University and earned both a Juris Doctor and PhD in government from the University of Texas at Austin. Recently, el Dr. Cuellar received a professional certificate in budget and finance from Georgetown University. Currently, Congressman Cuellar supports equal opportunity for men and women of all backgrounds. His legislative principles are based on the belief that education, family values, and hard work should open doors to new opportunities for all Americans. Congressman Cuellar serves as the only Texas Democrat on the powerful U.S. House Appropriations Committee. He is also the vice chair of the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Homeland Security, while also serving on the Defense Subcommittee and the Subcommittee on Agriculture, Rural Development, Food and Drug Administration, and related agencies. The congressman is also one of 2 of our Chile Congressional Vice Chairmen on our Board of Directors. So he's the other boss I mentioned earlier. So the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, and thank you so
Thank you
much.
again.
Thank you, and I appreciate everything that you've been doing for so many years that I appreciate it. Talking about college, I got bored, so I decided to get my second master's. I'm working on my second master's with a Navy War college. And I hadn't talked about it for a year because I said, hey, has any member of Congress ever got a degree? They said, no. What happened? So they drop out. So I wanted to get past my first year. So I got my first year. So now I'm working on that. So it's always, I think it's always important for all of us to keep learning. Learned that from my parents. Keep learning, keep learning. Ileana, before I get started, I certainly want to say, I miss you. Ileana was one of those great members, chairwoman of the Foreign Affairs. Her office was down the hall. I missed the little dog that was always there. At the Capitol? Wyoming. Oh my God, right? All right. She Hope she's campaigning for Liz Cheney. No, just kidding. But oh, good. Well, I just want to say thank you for what you've done. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the leadership that you provided in the United States foreign policy. Mario, I think Mario is supposed to speak after me. Look, I'm gonna tell you something about Mario Diaz. He's a dear friend of mine. But I'm gonna tell you something. He's got one of the best memories in the U.S. Congress. So if you have an opportunity to talk to him about his memory, because it's amazing. He can remember details. He can remember things that happened so many years ago. It's an amazing memory. So I please, when you do have an opportunity, just ask him about his memory. He really does. It's photographic in so many ways. Mario also, he and I serve in the appropriations, and I certainly want to say to all of y'all, thank you so much. I was saying to Mauricio, I said, hey, he said, well, you're one of my bosses. I am. I said, well, I think you need to work only 3 days and get a pay raise. He said, that's good. Today's my last day. So Mauricio, thank you. Look, let me just say, first of all, Chile. Chile is one of those organizations that has an impact on our leaders. They really have. And I'll go over this, and I think you heard about it, but let me just give you my perspective itself. This year's theme, Shape Your Future, captures the hope and the possibility of students. And we all have that. I'll give you my background quickly. My father and mother, Mexico, Guerrero, Tamaulipas. When my father became a legal resident and naturalized citizen, that process takes a long time. And my parents came over, and they were migrant workers. They worked in the jardines, and that's what I used to do, work with them on that. My father taught me several things, and that is work hard, and work hard. And from my mom, I learned the importance of education. And my parents only went to 1 to 5 years of education. They only knew a few words in English. It literally is all in Spanish. So going to school was all on the honor system. By that, they couldn't help us with homework because they didn't know English. So by the honor system is you stay at the table till you finish your homework. So it was on the honor system itself. And my parents, my father, when he was a gardener, also he was making $300 a month for 10 of us. I'm the oldest of 8 kids. But I can tell you that when I ran and became a member of Congress, I flew my parents here for the first time. They'd never been in an airplane. So it was interesting listening to my dad about flying. Think about it. He was saying, the plane wasn't moving, so I thought it was just going to drop. Because, in his mind, he thought that you have to feel that shake and bake to fly over here. First time they've been in Washington, and when my mom was up there and I was taking the oath, she did not understand a single word in English as they were going through that ceremony. But in her heart, she knew her son of migrant workers, had just became a member of Congress. And that story is what a lot of us want to do and have seen. Your parents, our parents have seen that. And this is why I've always emphasized education. I really feel that education is the greatest equalizer that we have in our society. It's one thing they cannot take away from you. Once you get the degree, it's yours. It's yours. And this is why I always put an emphasis on education because it is so key. So I'll talk a little bit about education. I'll talk about what your dreams are and how you can put that together. As I mentioned, education, because what I saw, my mom and dad were not able to get the education because in those days they would take out the young kids to go work in las pizcas. That's the field. More hands you had, more money you made. So you would take your young kids, so take them out of school and go work. Very different time. And when my parents were, we were growing up, my mom said, all of y'all are going to go and graduate from high school. You got to graduate from high school. And notice what I said. Now I tell my kids college, master's, PhD, or whatever the postgraduate degree. But in those days, high school is enough. I remember say, hey, you can go to college, but get your degree in high school. Because in those days, that was enough. Things have changed now where you're moving and then it was college and now it's graduate school itself. And this is what I tell my kids. my two daughters is just get your degree and keep going because that education is so important. It is the greatest equalizer that we have in our society. President John F. Kennedy said that our educational system cannot move faster than our economics. I mean, it's tied in together. It is tied in together. And the more education you have, the better it is. So I would emphasize that you get your education. And the way I would always look at it when I was younger, look at your lifespan. Let's say whatever it is, 75, 85, 90 years, whatever. You sacrifice at the beginning, and this is what I tell the young people, sacrifice at the beginning so you can have a much better life for the rest. You know, look at your lifespan. And I know when we're young, we think we're invincible and we think nothing's going to happen and I can do it later. And we all become Googles. You know what I mean by that? When my little girls, they go through a certain age and they say, Dad, I know that. Dad, I know. I tell them that, Dad, I know that. But that's the way I would picture it in my mind is this is my lifespan. And I'm going to sacrifice and work hard to get my education so I can move on. And we did that. And I did that. And so when I was in the state legislature, just to tell you how we're influenced, in Texas, I was the author of the largest scholarship in Texas history called the Texas Grant. It's still there. It's still the largest scholarship that we have in the state. In Congress, I pushed for the Pell Grants. And then I worked with Tom Cole, Republican, Democrat, to put the summer Pell Grant, because as you know, it was taken away. We put it back again because, hey, we do go to school in the summertime also. So it was important. For Hispanic serving institutions, one of the things that I've done is I sit on the appropriations, and when I would travel with Mario Diaz and other folks, you know, you have a lot of time in the airplane. I literally would take the appropriation bills with me. And I would look at it and say, okay, what can I add here? And one thing I did was I said, where can we add monies for Hispanic serving institutions in different bills? We usually think about the education, you know, the Department of Education, but there's so many other places. In fact, the Department of Defense has the largest research dollars of any place. So what I did is I went through the Ag, Department of Defense, and just Interior. I just went down everyone. And I noticed one thing that the Black colleges did their homework. Members did their homework many years ago. So what I would do is I would say Black colleges, Hispanic serving institution. And then if I saw that if the Black colleges were not included, I would include them in there to make sure that those dollars. And right now there are so many dollars that went in. And there are challenges that I saw in the appropriations under the National Science Foundation. There was not a pot of money for Hispanic serving institutions. And I kept saying, well, if these folks have it, this folks should have it. And I sat down with the director and they said, well, Congressman, you know, as you know, Hispanics are not monolithic. You got Mexican Americans, you got Puerto Ricans, you got this and that. And I said, yes, and what is your point? Well, you know, we can't put one pot of money. And I said, yes, you can. And for the first time, the National Science Foundation has a pot of money for Hispanic serving institutions. And we had to fight that because they were telling me, a Hispanic, that we were not monolithic. I said, I do understand that. There's liberals or conservatives and all that. And we did that. And I say that is because we all have to do our share. And in my committee, or when I was in the state legislature, I did my work on that. And then from there, you know, there were some other areas that I worked on to make sure that we put those dollars. Hispanic serving institutions that we put there, as I mentioned, I went down through every appropriation bill. And then from there, also there's a post bachelor's opportunities. Every year I put more money. And this year we put in more money there, so you can go for your graduate degrees. And then Gear Up for high school kids, put monies there also. And I just went down the line, TRIO program that some of y'all might be familiar. Every place where I saw that there were Hispanic serving institutions or minorities, I try to increase the funding in there also. So this is what we try to do as members of CHLI, try to create opportunities. That's all we can do. We can create the opportunities. After that, it's up to you to take advantage. And every generation, what we want to do is create opportunities. And then when you get to that age where you're making the decisions and you take our places, then you can do the same thing for the next generation. And that's what Chile is all about, is providing those opportunities on that. Bottom line is this: education, hard work, knowing what you want to do. And I know at a young age, we're all trying to decide what to do. I wanted to become a doctor, a medical doctor. I am like my kids say, well, you're a doctor, but not the one that makes money, a PhD. But I wanted to become a doctor on it. And I didn't have mentors or guidance on it in the sense I'm talking about in school. And so, I went to University of Texas for a summer, and I saw cadavers and all that. No, I'm gonna become an attorney. But somebody should have said, no, but if you do this, it'll be fine, you can do this. That's why having a mentor is so important. You can have your education, but go out there and find a mentor that can help you on that and provide. And especially what you do, you also become a mentor even to your own brothers and sisters, your younger one. You might think they're not paying attention, or you might think they don't listen to you, but they are. They really, really, really are. So you become a mentor to your own kids. But the education, the hard work, and finding the mentor is so important. And Chile will help you in finding those mentors or the opportunities that provided. So with that, I want to say thank you so much. And remember the words of Mark Twain when he said many years ago. He says, thunder is impressive, but it's lightning that does the real work. What do you mean by that? There's some people that talk, but there's other people that roll up their sleeves and get the work done. And I think that is what we all need to do. And I know that's what you're going to do with Chile organization. So with that, I say thank you so much. God bless you. And we'll see you very soon. And Liliana.
So I'm gonna ask that Ileana come up for a photo, Aaron as well. Laquita, where's my Texan? Laquita?
All right,
Our
we
board
got Texans,
And
and
then,
then we got wannabe Texans. So
okay, so I'm gonna ask, who is here from Texas? Jennifer, I know Jennifer's from Texas. Who else is here from Texas? Nobody else from Texas? All right, so I want to make sure. So we can go ahead and get a photo. Jennifer?
all right, Texas.
The salsa dance lesson is afterwards. All right. Oh, perfect timing. Perfect timing.
Hey, hold it. What are we supposed to ask Mario? Memory. It's amazing. You can bring up, say, what happened on September 25th, name the date, 2008, and he'll tell you what happened. It's amazing. It's been a little while. I'm sure amazing. Everybody talks about it.
Okay, so this is perfect timing. We'll just start with the photos.
All right, yeah.
And then I know I'm not gonna get a little first. Okay, Leo, good timing, get it Tejano. Come on.
Oh, Leo.
Leo's in the house. And then I saw Brandon, our advisory council member, yes, from HC. Who am I missing? I gotta make sure all the bosses are in the picture. Is that it for now? Okay, all right. Okay.
Everyone.
All right.
All right, let's go. Eyes on me? Yeah. Up top. Ready? 1, 2, 3. We're gonna take a few. Okay. Hold that.
Follow Will first.
That's it.
Follow Will
A
first.
few more. Up top. The lens, not the big smiles.
Okay, perfect. All righty. Let's see here. Okay. Thank you, Aaron, again for playing along. Greatly appreciate it. Okay, so next is the other vice chairman. And so as you can see, and as the congressman, so the congressman earlier had mentioned like how the two of you work together and all that good stuff. So next is Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart, a proud alum of the University of South Florida in Tampa. Anybody from South Florida in the house? Oh, mira, there's more than from Texas. Okay. The Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart proudly represents Florida's 25th Congressional District. He is a senior member of the House Committee on Appropriations and is the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development, in addition to serving on the state foreign operations and related programs and defense subcommittees. He passionately serves his constituents, acting tirelessly in defense of individual rights and liberties, promoting economic prosperity and supporting a robust national defense. The congressman is also very well known for his advocacy of human rights and democracy around the world, as well as for his staunch support of our global allies. Congressman Diaz-Balart is also, as I mentioned earlier, the other vice chairman of the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute. And with that, the other boss, the floor is yours, dear.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks so much. How y'all doing? Hey, before I say anything else, obviously Eliana Ross-Layton is here. And I'm sure you've heard, right? And she's a force of nature. She is really kind of the person that, has broken so many barriers. First Hispanic woman ever elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. Yeah. So if you haven't had a chance to spend some time with her, it's time well spent. It's time well spent. Look, I'm going to be very brief. I know we're all busy and it's a crazy time. And I'm glad that Henry was here. So Henry and I, as he may have said, work very closely together. We're both on the same committee together. We're on the Appropriations Committee, which two things. First place, it's what the Appropriation Committee does is the one thing that Congress has to do. It's probably the most difficult thing that Congress does, but it's the only thing that Congress actually has to do. As a matter of fact, if the appropriation bills got done and we all went home, we would be fulfilling our congressional responsibility, our constitutional responsibility. And the interesting thing about the appropriations process, that it doesn't matter who's in control, who's where, it requires a majority in the House, 60 votes in the Senate. So 60% of the votes in the Senate and a presidential signature. So the appropriation bills always have to be negotiated, which means they eventually always have to be bipartisan. And by the way, it doesn't matter who's in control of what. They end up having to be bipartisan, which adds to, the fact that we have to sit down and negotiate. And we do so. And which is why the appropriators in Congress tend to have a bit of a different relationship. Not that we don't have, and we do, huge differences and very aggressive debates. But we also realize that when it's all said and done, we're gonna have to figure out how to get the bills done and how to pass them, House, Senate, and signed by the president. And so I'm glad you heard from Henry. He is frankly, I think, one of the bright spots in the House. He's a person who knows how to work with Republicans and Democrats. He's very strong on his viewpoints and a very principled leader and somebody who I'm privileged to work with day in, day out. And for me, one of the really cool things about being in Congress is being on this board, on the CHLI board. It's, the motto, right, is advancing the Hispanic community's diversity of thought. For so many years, Latinos in this country are kind of talked about as if we were this one group of people, when we have so much diversity in our communities, in our cultures, in our background, and in our histories. And yet, obviously, we have a lot of things that unite us. But that diversity of thought is something that a lot of times people assume that we're all going to think, that we're all supposed to think the same because we're Hispanic. Well, the reality is that Hispanics are, bright folks who think and who think and who act and who, raise their families and do so in a way that I think makes the United States a much better place. And so this organization is truly the only real bipartisan organization of its kind in DC. Think about that. There are a gazillion organizations, but this one is truly bipartisan. And you saw that, right? And you see this with the folks that make up the board and the fact that we have some amazing corporate members of the board, right? Who are just so committed to this. And this yearly event, which is inviting interns and students and staffers and members of Congress to participate, is something that I think is really exciting. And I guess it's Shape Your Future is the theme of this year, right? All right, just in case I missed it, just in case. And as Henry says, I've got a great memory, so I won't forget it. Look, and again, but we don't take for granted, none of us take for granted because we're all busy. The panel, the folks who participate in the panels, they're exceedingly busy. They've got, busy lives, and yet they're willing to come and spend this time with all of us, with all of you. And so thank all of you for doing that. I think that, the country is facing some challenges, right? I don't have to tell you, we have highest inflation that we've had in 4 decades. Gasoline prices are really, really hurting American families. One of the things that I kind of used to describe what it really is, because it's not theory. So if you receive a salary, right? And I always ask people, are you willing to just give up a full month of your salary? Just give it up. Don't take it. People go, no, that would be devastating. Well, do you realize that because of the inflation, that's what it's costing American families right now? If you're on a salary, you basically now are the equivalent of making a full month less. You're still working the 12 months, but because of inflation, it's so damaging that it's basically a full month salary out of most families' pocketbooks because of inflation. And by the way, inflation that I would argue is caused by the federal government, by stupid, bad policies. It's never a good idea to replicate other countries who are not successful. Their economic policies try to do it here because we're having the same results that we've seen in other places, right, around the world. Inflation is something that I guarantee all of you in your lifetime, you never even talked about because we've taken for granted that it's not something the United States has had to deal with. Like, by the way, the fact that we used to be energy independent just 2 years ago. And now we're no longer energy independent. Decisions made by your government, your federal government, are the reason that we're dealing with those issues. And I will tell you that the people who are struggling the most are working class, middle class Americans. And a lot of those are, right, son los latinos en los Estados Unidos, los hispanos, que no tenemos el privilegio, no tienen el privilegio de estar trabajando con Zoom siempre. That's good if you're, in some big office, but not for most people. So those decisions are being made up here, and it's so important that you all are witnessing this, that you're participating, that you're leaders, because you are the future leaders of this country. And you're the ones who are going to make or break the future of our country. But I will leave you this one thought. I'm absolutely convinced that as long as we get serious about our future, as long as we're not reckless about decisions that are being made, decisions that are causing things like inflation and, crazy energy prices, et cetera. I'm convinced that the best days are ahead of the United States of America. And you know why I'm sure of that? When I come and I meet people like you all. Seriously, the fact that you're here, you're taking the time, the initiative to be here, to participate. That's why I'm so sure that the best days of our country are ahead. So I want to thank you for what you do. I want to thank you for your involvement. For those participating on the panel, thank you as well. And remember, we live in the greatest nation in the history of humanity. And it's up to you all, who are the future leaders, to make sure it stays that way. So thank you so much. God bless you all. Thank you. All right, absolutely.
All right, so who raised their hand from South Florida?
All right.
Everybody from South Florida coming up to take a photo with Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart.
We call Florida the free state of Florida. That's right.
Yes, we'll just keep that here. All right. Because we want to make sure that you're taking
Okay.
a picture with the future. leaders.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
all righty, so right up
Absolutely. How you
here.
doing? Are you really? What part you live? Where are you from? What part? What part? All right, okay. You're way up in the frigid box. You gotta be here too.
Come on in, introduce yourself.
Did
you introduce yourself?
Hi. Again.
Okay, all right, ready?
Everyone.
The camera first.
One, two, three.
Okay.
All right, you hold the stomach in the slot. 1, 2, 3. Right. All right, one more.
Got it. Okay, somebody needs to go and ask her before we get. Okay.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Take care.
And I know we're getting ready for our first panel, but I want to invite Aaron back to finish his remarks with the wonderful low and high tech presentation that he had. So Aaron, come on up, dear. Thank you again for getting off the freeway for a little bit with me here. And then I'll come back. I think all the panelists are here, so well, go ahead and finish off and we'll have a couple of questions for you and then we'll continue with the panel.
Great, it depends. Did we do what we said we would do? Did we practice what we preached here about being flexible? I think so, right? We saw so many leadership examples, and forget what we're going to tell you we saw. Did you see what Marianne did every time an honored guest came in? She made sure that they connected with their constituent. And that's a soft skill that we think we're forgetting in the digital era. But those 2 seconds that the chairman had, that each of these people had, that Ileana Ross-Layton had with people that mattered to her,
Right.
that was a leadership lesson. And that's going to be valued even more in the digital era. I'm going to say just a couple more minutes until you give me
No,
the, until you
no,
give me-
no,
give me
go
the
go
thing.
ahead.
All right, well, let's see where we were before. Let's do that. You get your coffee, Marianne. We're going to learn in a minute. We're going to give you a test. We were on the 405. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, we're back on the freeway. Do you remember what was the first thing? We're not talking lanes. We're talking what? Intersections. I'm glad someone was here. Excellent. All right. So the second thing, the second leadership lesson is you're not the future leaders. You're really the leaders. I brought a visual aid. So if I told you this was going to be high tech, low tech, Marianne's not even here for this. So we might not even tell her this happened. But in your career, something's going to happen. And it's something that I learned at a young age that involves these 3 things. Oh, yes, I'm doing this. It's happening. All right. When I was young, when I was your age, there was this commercial. I'm aging myself. Some of you are already nodding, so you know what's happening. And there was this commercial, and there was this guy. Marianne, things happened while you left. There was this guy that was blithely walking down the corridor eating his peanut butter. Okay. Do you remember this? Some of you are nodding your head. You know what happens next. Coming down the other side of the corridor, there was a person blithely eating his or her, I can't remember, chocolate. Okay. And the genius of this ad campaign, the genius of this marketing campaign was that at a certain moment, what happens to the guy eating his peanut butter and the woman eating her chocolate? What happens? Amazing. This happens. And they get mad at each other. And she says, you got your chocolate and my peanut butter. And he said, you got your peanut butter and my chocolate, or vice versa, whatever it was. I loved this because if you're a marketer, you know, what was this about? It was about this. And I'm giving this to you just because I like it. So you won the prize there. So it was all about a product. But the amazing thing that's the leadership lesson for your career, it was about a product. But you know what I learned later on as I'm consuming all of this stuff? It was the same company. It was a brilliant marketing tool, and there's a leadership lesson for your career because they found out that inside the same company, they had resources that can leverage off one another. Did you know it was within the same company? No. So you, as the future, the emerging leader, now that I have peanut butter all over my chocolate and chocolate all over my peanut butter on my suit, you as the future leader in an organization are going to have to realize, I see something you didn't see. I see something in your management skill. I see something in you taking my peanut butter for my chocolate. There you go. What are you doing?
Yeah.
She's going to eat that. Now, you're going to see things coming in and people are going to say, wait, you just got here. You were the intern or the first termer or the second termer. You just got here. But the reality is, since everything is changing in every single organization, that perspective is going to be valuable. What are they seeing that can work together that we didn't know? And you can say powerful statements like, as a young or emerging leader, as a member of a diverse Hispanic community, something that we've already heard about 5 times today, as someone who is either first or second generation in this country, who's coming off of a very motivated career path, an early career path, you can say things like that in an organization, and you should embrace those collision moments. So I hope if you take nothing else away other than remembering I was the guy that I got preempted by 2 members of Congress. That's a good day. I'm having a good day on DC terms, right? That don't take lanes, really think about intersections. Let some things happen that are some amazing collisions, and you tell that to people in your career. And then the third thing I'd leave with you today, and advice I just wish I'd started listening to earlier, was what Marianne opened up this meeting with. She talked about showing up. I had a great mentor, Ambassador Linda Jewell. She was my ambassador in Quito, Ecuador. Any of you know Quito? Okay, I love Quito. And I used to shuttle back and forth between Quito and Guayaquil. That was kind of my job. It was in the media role. And she one day sent me to a city called Ambato, which might not find its way into your history or travel route of Ecuador. She said, you got to go to Ambato, Aaron. I'm sending you as my representative. I said, well, what am I supposed to do? She said, just show up. Okay, Madam Ambassador, no, seriously, what am I supposed to do? I tried to get in with her chief of staff, tried to find out what the briefing was. What am I supposed to do? Aaron, just show up. So, Madam Ambassador, I really don't know what our agenda is. I know there's a lot of complexities with the security situation, with the economic situation. And she said, Aaron, I need you to just show up. And I thought, well, that's pretty cheap because I'm smart. You know, I'm more than just beautiful packaging, right? Don't just ship me off to just show up. But what happened was people realized that they were there that I was there for them to educate me. And the US government doesn't have a reputation as always being super humble or super open. And by showing up, some amazing things happened. We started programs. They told us about how. They said, nosotros somos amigos cuando ustedes nos tratan como socios. We are friends when you treat us like a partner. And they kept saying that over and over and over again. And that phrase was something we took back. And so what I thought was a cheap, just, go, Aaron, and show up was an important piece of advice in showing up. So when there's the lunch and learn, just show up. When there's the extra assignment or the trip where they ask for volunteers, just show up. When there's the moment when the CEO is having the town hall, or when there's the employee resource group that's evolving around a new issue, when there's the service day, organizations large and small, just show up. I don't say that for people who are members of the Chile community. You know you have to show up. I say that to everybody. Maybe you know it a little bit more than anybody else. What a powerful story from the chairman about his parents. They knew the importance of what it meant to show up. So my 3 pieces of ill-gotten or hopefully well-intentioned advice today. Please don't think of your career as a lane. It's not. Embrace something in your organization where 2 things are coming together and you can see that it's delicious, but maybe the company can't. Probably it's within the own company. Probably it's peanut butter and chocolate. Great things that exist there. And then just show up, not because it's empty, not because you're the youngest person or the lowest person in the organogram, but because by showing up, you're going to send a message about yourself, your personal brand, and what it means to be a part of this generation. We're proud, it's been said before, we're proud to be a part of the Chile community. I'm proud that I've been invited into that community in various stages of my career, because as we all know, there's not one big community that looks the same. And that's why the future looks very good with you. So thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right, and now I'm gonna ask that the members for the panel make their way up here to the panel. I'm gonna go ahead and introduce you. Gotta just get this little chocolate off the page here. So, all right, so we're gonna kick off the career opportunities panel. You'll notice in your flyers and in the moderator today was going to be Marissa Sanchez with Ferox Strategies. She's an awesome alum of our Global Leaders Internship Program, but she wasn't feeling well. And so my apologies, it's me again. So as a gentle reminder, we will have questions and answers towards the end. You can start, kind of jotting down your questions if you're here in person. If you're on Zoom, go ahead and start jotting down the questions in Zoom so that we just have those already queued up. It is a pleasure to be here with everybody here to learn a little bit about all these different career opportunities, which is awesome. Right after Aaron just talked about the freeway and how there really isn't a super clear path, because you'll hear about all of these other different journeys. Go ahead, please, take a seat. And I'm going to start, I'm going to go ahead and announce and read the bios of every single person. And then I'm going to get into questions. So whatever one you want, there's no special. You're going to have to hit the little green button there to hit for the, oh, this is perfect. The new mom gets the cool seat. All right, I love it. Okay, all right. So when I mention your name, if you can just please raise your hand so that everybody in the room knows who you are. Elisa Lai is the manager of multicultural stakeholder relations at McDonald's Corporation. In this role, she focuses on growing the company's brand reputation by implementing an engagement strategy with multicultural, non-governmental organizations and government stakeholders. Before spending the last 10 years in politics and public service, she attended George Washington University. During the Obama administration, she served a political appointee at the State Department as Deputy Director of Finance Events, and then was also the Deputy Director of Finance Events for the 2016 Hillary for America campaign, and most recently served in Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office as her special assistant. McDonald's is also one of our Chile Advisory Council members. Next is Brandon Hicks. He's a government affairs lead at HP Inc. in North Carolina Central University alum. He currently works on federal and state policy. His portfolio includes digital equity and diversity and inclusion. Brandon previously served as Director of African American Affairs for New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. He has also served as national organizer for National Action Week, a civil rights organization founded by Reverend Al Sharpton. Brandon is passionate about creating opportunities for diverse future leaders, and Brandon recently joined as well the Chile Advisory Council. Laquita Anderson is a policy director at Brownstein Hyatt Faber and Schreck, which I mentioned and you saw earlier. She's one of my bosses, which is why she's in the middle area. A Georgetown University and University of North Texas alum, Laquita Anderson guides companies in highly regulated industries through local, state, and federal policy arenas, building coalitions of diverse stakeholders and liaisoning with constituency groups across the country. She skillfully blends communications and advocacy strategies to protect brands and position her clients for success in Washington, D.C. As legislators and regulators consider action impacting her clients, Laquita engages Democratic policymakers, provides insight into their thinking, and leverages her unique understanding of how to navigate the third-party groups and grasstops organizations that influence them. She is a Chile board member, and she's also the chair of our Strategic Alliances Committee. Joanna Diaz Sophor, and who I said earlier, a new mom, is the principal manager of government and external affairs at T-Mobile. In her current role, she works with internal and external stakeholder organizations advocating on the public policy issues. Joanna joined T-Mobile in 2020 after working as a consultant on the historic T-Mobile Sprint merger. Previously, she served clients in the tourism, energy, telecommunications, and manufacturing industries. She utilized her expertise in politics and government relations to build and manage successful issue and advocacy campaigns. Joanna is a proud alum of Chapman University, and she also recently joined our Chile Advisory Council. Ernesto Alfonso is the policy assistant of the National Security Council at the White House. Ernesto is a Foreign Service officer currently serving in the National Security Council's Multilateral Affairs Directorate. Did I say that right? Directorate. I know I was saying something. Always ask even if you don't know. That's okay. He previously served as a special assistant to the Deputy Secretary of the State for Management and Resources, advising on European legislative and budgetary issues. At the State Department, he has also served as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization Desk Officer in the Office of European Security and Political Affairs and Watch Officer in the Operations Center. Abroad, Ernesto has completed assignments at the U.S. Embassy in Rome as Economic Officer, in Afghanistan as Political Officer, and in Mexico as Vice Consul. Ernesto holds a Master of International Affairs from Columbia University and a BA in International Affairs from Florida International University. Before we get started, let's give them all a round of applause. And I also need to check with my other boss, Mauricio, how much time do we have, dear? Because now we like reschedule a little bit of things. We just keep going. You'll tell me when to stop. All right, okay. So what we have is we've met, we've kind of learned a little bit about each other. And so I'm gonna first ask one question to each person, and then we'll do another round where everybody can kind of chime in. Everybody keep in mind what questions you want, either for one person in particular or for the group. So first is to Ernesto. In an interview for your alma mater, the Florida International University, you shared that meeting a foreign service officer on your campus was a turning point. So if you can share with us, what about that experience made it so memorable, and what advice can you give to the high school and college students and young adults here about making those connections and how to meet and connect with even some of the guest speakers? I think it's a little, I think it's the green. There you go.
Okay, there we go.
Can everybody hear him okay?
Can you hear me? Wonderful.
Or yeah, I think you'll be okay now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, number one, thank you so much for hosting this and for the opportunity to come speak to our future leaders in the coming years. I said that I go back to FIU every now and then. One of the things I take seriously to not forget your roots, to not forget where you come from. So I go back to Florida International University every so often to speak to students and to professors and whatnot. So what I meant by that was that when I was at FIU, I was probably in my second year undergrad, and I was taking a class called diplomacy that was taught by a diplomat in residence, which was a senior foreign service officer. When I took the class and I saw that person, someone who looked like me, had an accent like me, someone who made it all the way through the foreign service and to the senior rankings of the department and our diplomatic corps in the United States, that was a switch for me. That told me, you too can do this, and this is why I say representation matters. And that was a very specific turning point in my life. And this is why I'm here, today. This is why I've been working in embassies abroad and whatnot. So with that, in terms of speakers and guests at universities, I would say take every opportunity that you possibly can. Go, if you're still in school, continue going through all this, to all those chats, to all those talks. And not only there, if you're here in DC, this is a gigantic opportunity for you as well. I remember interning here years ago when I first came out of college, and I would just go to hearings in the House and the Senate that were open, and I would talk to people. Just like every opportunity you possibly can is a learning opportunity. So take advantage of each one of those.
All right, and that goes to the same thing that we had earlier on, right, about just showing up. And even if you're shy, it's okay. Show up. Nobody knew you were gonna go, right? If you're shy, and nobody knows that you're shy because you showed up. So you're fine. No one's gonna know. You don't have to go around telling people I'm shy, right? I get people that say, oh, but I'm shy. I'm like, dude, it's okay. Just show up. It's okay. You're gonna learn a lot just by showing up. Elisa, the next one is for you, dear. How has your experience on the Hill assisting Speaker Pelosi enriched your current position at McDonald's?
So I was on the Hill for about 5 years. I was with Speaker Pelosi, and it was a wonderful but really tough experience. She has the highest expectations and is the hardest working person. It took an army of young people to keep up with this one woman. So it really taught me, like Congressman Cuellar said, working hard is so important. Showing up is so important. I think if you think about like the most formidable moments in your life, is it behind a Zoom camera? It's usually something that you are like interacting with somebody and those relationships. So I got to learn a lot. I was a big sponge, got to be by her side in all the phone calls, meetings, interactions she had on the House floor. So really listening intently, being purposeful. Whatever she said, I kind of took in, analyzed, and then adjusted how I did all my work from there on. And then I brought all that knowledge with me to McDonald's and really took that 40,000 foot view and was trying to be very strategic about how I now have all this information. How do I put it into action? So that has really helped me in my job at McDonald's and kind of making that transition off Capitol Hill.
All right, thank you. The next question is for Brandon. So how many people here are thinking of going to law school? Raise your hand. You're in law school. Oh, I love that. She's like, we've already passed that. We're already in law school. Okay. All right. Hands up high. You're thinking about going, you're in law school. Okay, great. So Brandon, so share with the group, the rest of the group, what was your decision-making process, or like the process of the journey of thinking, I maybe want to go to law school, or I'm not sure if I want to go. I'm kind of thinking about those graduate degrees.
Thanks for that question. So for undergrad, I went to North Carolina Central University. It's a historically Black college in Durham, North Carolina. Really enjoyed myself there. I was a political science major. So political science, I didn't know if I wanted to go get a master's in that, PhD. So I had a mentor. North Carolina Central University has a law school on its campus. He was a professor at that law school. He was like, you need to go to law school. You need to go to law school. And so it was really my mentor pushed me to law school. And so I ended up going to Washington and Lee School in Virginia. It was good 3 years there, but it was like probably one of the best experiences of my life as far as education. I really like that stamp of approval that you get with a law degree. It's not just the learning, but it's like people view you a different way when you say that you're a lawyer. So I like that. And I'm always a big proponent of people going as far as they can with their education. Like the previous speaker said, no one can take that away from you. So go if you're thinking about it. But do consider the cost. I do want to put that caveat, but I think it's worth it. So.
All right. Okay. Joanna, the next one's for you, dear. So what have you learned from your work on election campaigns and then the private sector about finding your most suitable workplace and growing within the company?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys.
Just hit that
Okay,
little-
can you guys hear me?
Yep, we can.
I thank you, first of all, Marianne, for having me here today. It's really, really great to be with you all. I think the most important thing when you're, whether you're working for an election or for a corporation, is assessing the lay of the land and figuring out how you can be most helpful. So what's missing in that space and what are you good at and how can you lean in on that skill or make something that they're doing even better? If you're interested in election campaigns, it kind of feels like a startup and it has an end date. So your strategy there should be, okay, you have to move very hard, you have to move very fast. It's going to be probably like a hard time because, there's no time for anything personal. Can you wake up earlier? Can you stay later? Can you make that last phone call, raise that last dollar? You have to give it all you got. You have to live everything on the field every single day because there's an end date and there's a lot of high risk for a campaign. For a corporation, you can be a little more strategic and you don't have to be so aggressive. There's no end date and corporations are not startups, right? They have resources. There's a way things are done. There's probably a little bureaucracy here and there. And so my advice to you, if you're going to go into a corporation, is figure out how things get done. And one thing that I've learned that's served me in absolutely every organization that I've been in, whether it's a campaign or a firm or a corporation, is sometimes the people that are a little like less unassuming are actually the most powerful and the most helpful. So I think it's people's instinct to go be friends with the VP or the C-suite and whoever has that corner office. I'm not saying that's bad, but I think there's a better way to do it. Some of my most powerful allies and greatest friends in corporations or wherever I've been have actually been the executive assistant or the admin or the person who's running the front desk. Getting to know them, especially in DC, you will find that people kind of discard those people because they think they're not important, but really they're sometimes the most important people in organizations. They have historical knowledge. They know where the bodies are buried. They know how to get budget approved. A lot of times they're in the room when personnel decisions are being made. And so just being really thoughtful about the friends that you make and, maybe, the VP or the C-suite, yeah, it's a really cool title and it's awesome to talk to those people. But sometimes the more unassuming people in the organization are actually the most helpful. And those are the people you should really get to know better.
All righty, thank you.
Yeah.
Laquita, so we all know she's from Texas. Yeah, so you started your public service in Texas, and then came to Washington, and we were talking about this before, and we've talked a little bit about it, and I think Ileana may have mentioned it, and even Mario, things have changed, over the years, but can you share with the group, from your field and your perspective, having been in Texas and then in Washington, how have things changed? How has the field that you're in, and explain that a little bit as well to the audience if they're not familiar with lobbying?
So to explain a little bit, I am a government relations professional, but I look at it as a way to amplify what the company is doing, amplify what it's doing, put them in the right rooms. I have 2 clients here, McDonald's, and not here, somewhere else, I got another client here, sorry. But anyway, 1 client is McDonald's, and it's showing how to navigate it. I think one of the hardest things in DC is learning how to navigate. There's a lot of companies, a lot of organizations, a lot of groups, and it just helps to navigate whatever the issue that they have. I show them and direct them in the right way. And how I've changed and how things have changed, I've gotten bolder. I've always been a bolder person, and not bold in a abrasive mode, but more of being your authentic self, and whatever that is, being bold. I have on gold shoes, so that it shows you just sort of how you develop it in your being, in your walk, in your talk. When people listen to you, people listen to that. And what I found that from my beginning of my career was a little bit timid, a little bit nervous about things. I'm not that anymore. It took 15 or so years, which is fine. It's the growth. And I think here in DC, what we've done in the last few years, everybody has become some sort of activist. Either it's for personal preparation, personal amplification, or professional, either one, but we're bolder. We're able to speak. We're speaking loud where you want to be heard. And I think that's the difference that I see in myself, and also in government relations. It allows you to be that person who speaks. Use your mic, use your lane, whatever lane that is, use it to the best of your ability. Make sure that they know and remember what that lane was and what you did. So I think I answered your question. I hope I did.
Yeah.
But I think just being able to take that lane, someone used it earlier, that lane that you're in, and expand it and be that person, and you bring somebody with you always.
Awesome. The next question is to all of you. What is the best piece of advice you can give someone who is interested in or new in your industry, in your field? So Ernesto, we'll start with you and we'll just work our way down.
Yeah, thank you. So for someone who's interested in starting a career in government, in a national affairs arena, yes, there's the State Department, there's the Foreign Service, but there's also many other agencies and many other departments that do a lot of work in the international arena, not to mention the Congress, both in the SFRC and in the House as well. So just look at all these opportunities. One thing I always say is opportunity is not a lengthy visitor. If you see one, it looks good, you're excited about it, you think it'll get you in the right direction, jump on it. The next best thing will come later, but you got to get started somewhere. When it comes to the Foreign Service in particular, which is my, it's my home, if you're interested in it, go for those tests, start taking them now. A lot of people who join the Foreign Service, it takes them multiple times to pass the exams. They're tough, but they're not impossible. So, take them. You have to take them multiple times. Then go ahead and do that. I'm here as a resource if you need, if you have questions after the panel, if you want to hear about that experience. But I would say just for Foreign Service, start working on the exams if you want to do that now. Any other opportunities, just jump on them as they come.
Are they doing the foreign exams in person and via Zoom now, or is it just in person?
So I believe it's a combination of the two.
Yeah.
And so it's a 3-part component, a 3-part exam. Number one is the written exam, which you take at an institution. And then if you pass that, you go on to answer a few questions in sort of a, essay format. If you pass that, then they invite you in person to do what's called the oral assessment. About 10 to 15 people are selected every so often. And you just go through an entire day of projects and exercises and questions about your past and all of that. One great thing about the current service is that we don't have a specific background that we're looking for. We have a variety of people in the current service, from lawyers to teachers to anything you can possibly imagine. We will shape you from the ground up once you join.
That's great. Brandon, how about you, dear?
So you hear me? Okay. I also work in government affairs / as a lobbyist. So I think the best way to get involved in that is to get involved in government. I first started, my last job was with the governor's office. So local politics, federal politics, get involved in politics and government so that you can be marketable.
All right, Laquita.
Always be a student. Always be a student in lobbying, be a student in business, be a student in learning how to elevate yourself. That's how I've done it. I've always learned and taken opportunity to learn. And as Wendy just mentioned, of getting involved. We go back home, my parents don't know what a lobbyist is, I gave them a definition, but they don't know what that is, but they know what I do, right? They know what I do. And so understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, the purpose of it. And we have so many organizations here in town where you can learn. And again, that goes back to always being a student.
All right, thank you for that. How about you, dear?
I would say if you are in government, you are on the Hill, you all have a great opportunity with Chile, with the fellowships and everything. My big advice to folks is stay long enough to gain that expertise so that you can be marketable outside of the government. And it's a commitment. It's, I think, more than 2 years for sure. Like, you want to be leaving at a high enough level where you are marketable to corporations. So, if you're a staff assistant, stay until you get that next promotion, work really hard. And definitely to what the other speaker said, there is no lane, like do the intersections on the Hill. Like, there's so much to learn, so much you can do, and so many people you can meet. Like Joanna said, like meeting maybe other fellow staff assistants. Maybe you don't think that would help you. You'd be so surprised. That staff assistant becomes an LC, an LD, and then has an opening in their office. So my big advice is to stay, get that experience, and then start looking once you can really market yourself outside of government.
Perfect, thank you, Joanna.
My fellow panelists have said a lot about, working in government affairs, and I think they give great advice. I want to talk really quickly about industry. I work in the tech and telecom industry, and I had never, ever, that industry never crossed my mind ever before. I did not, when I was a little girl, say, I want to work for telecom. I didn't even know what telecom was. So I'm assuming a lot of you in the room, there's probably not a lot of you, if any, that want to go into telecom or tech. But what I've learned about this industry, because I actually did government affairs for Disney for a few years, and that was like a fun, awesome job. Like, everybody knows Disney. But the thing about tech and telecom is everybody uses a cell phone. And we learned we learned a great lesson, right? We already knew it, but we learned it even harder during the pandemic, that if you don't have a cell phone, if you don't have a broadband connection, you're out of luck. And so this may not be, tech and telecom may not be your first choice or something you've thought about before, but I would encourage you to look into it. It's a really, really great industry. It's recession proof. We're going to be using cell phones and broadband for a long, long time. And it's a really, really good industry to get into. And actually, most people that I know in this industry, and I fell into this industry again, by, basically through the political world, I fell into it. But most people that are in this industry and are like telecom lawyers and regulators and things like that, same thing. They didn't really grow up knowing that they were going to be in this industry, but realize how actually important it is and how much a part of the future it is. So it's a great thing to just consider as you kind of think about whether you want to do government affairs or comms, or if you want to be a lawyer, if you're trying to figure out what kind of lawyer you're still trying to be, great industry to consider.
All righty, good. So hopefully you've been thinking about a little bit about what they all contributed here. The next question is to Alyssa and Brandon, specifically because of the work that you're doing and what you have mentioned before is you both have experience in working on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion in your current roles. What are some of the best practices and how can students promote their diversity and add value to the workplace? Brandon, you want to go first?
Yeah, there are so many. I work in tech, I work for HP. There's so many employee resource organizations, and companies are leaning more into their diverse employees. So I don't think it's.
So Brandon, explain what is an employee resource group. Does everybody know what that is? Not everybody, I probably know. So if you can explain what that is.
They have like a Black group, they have like a Hispanic group, LGBT groups, to really affinity groups to really create community in the organizations. And so companies are really leaning into that. So you don't have to see it as anything you have to do extra. Just show up. You're competent, you're smart, and companies are realizing that. So I don't know if you need to do anything extra to wave the flag that I am this or that. But there are definitely spaces being created in organizations to support and recognize you.
Okay.
So my experience is working in the speaker's office. She has a lot of control on who sits on committees. So if you look at the House committees, how, at least in her control of the Democratic side, how diverse everybody is. Diverse in not only race, gender, but also where they're from. East Coast, West Coast, South, the Midwest. So that I feel like DEI is a lens, and in everything you do, everything she did, she looked at everything through that DEI lens. Coming to a corporation, I learned that it's not everyone uses that lens, which is, for me, it was a little bit of a rude awakening because all my life, everybody had that lens. So I think you should feel so confident, like Brandon said, that you can walk into a room in a corporation and share that lens with other people. They want that, there's a desire for it, and they want to hear your perspective and your diverse voices. And I think it's more that we have to lean into it so hard that it becomes not a trend, but a practice. So that's, I would also say, I wrote down this quote, I have it on my desk. So President Kennedy said, every person can make a difference and everyone should try. If we go into every corporation, every job with that lens, can you imagine what companies, what the government, what industries would look like in the future? It'd be amazing.
All right, I'm going to switch now to talking about applying for fellowships and internships. I'm going to start with Ernesto and Joanna, and then anybody else to add to that. Ernesto, you can share your experiences with fellowships and how you apply, why you should go, all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So the fellowship that I applied for is called the Pickering, the Thomas Pickering Fellowship. It's a State Department fellowship. There's two of them, Thomas Pickering and also the Rango Fellowship, which are, they're created to try and bring diversity into the ranks of the Foreign Service and the Department of State in general. I learned about those in college. State Department does a pretty good job at trying to advertise those in different universities. So I applied for both. In the process, very similar to the Foreign Service in general, or the exams in general. Go through a panel, you do tests and all of this, and you get in. Then they pay for your studies, your graduate studies, and then you sign a contract in which you basically state that you will work for the Foreign Service for a minimum of 5 years as a commitment, and you see if you stay after that. So far, it's worked great for me. I've stayed. It's been over 8 years in the Foreign Service. I'm happy, and definitely staying for the long haul. And in terms of internships, I did a few internships in DC, also an international affairs firm, that were extremely helpful for getting that fellowship. So that's why I'm mentioning them. So one of the internships I did was with the FIU's Office of Federal Relations, and the other internship I did was with a medical, a healthcare lobbying firm. And so those two internships were key in helping me shape my application for the fellowship process and giving a good presentation and a good, to the people on the panel.
Okay, great. Joanna?
Yeah, I think I've never done a fellowship, but I've done my fair share of internships. And I would say the internship that I got, my internship with Disney, which then got me my job at Disney, changed my life. And what basically internships and volunteering and fellowships, that whole process taught me was that if you don't necessarily come from, like family, money, or connections, doing the internship or the fellowship can literally change your life. So when I applied for the internship at Disney, I was a sophomore in college and I was at community college. I put myself through school, so that was how I could afford to go to school. And I was about to transfer into the four-year institution. And I had up until that point done a lot of little internships, not anything Disney level. I volunteered for everybody in the political world locally. I honestly was just happy to be there. It was just so fun for me. I was so thrilled to be a part of the world, and I was happy to do it. I didn't really think that it would serve me later on. I was just glad to be in the room. And it turned out one of the guys that I used to intern for and help his candidates, he became a consultant for Disney, and he sent me the link and I applied. And once I knew that I had skin in the game, I became really obsessed. And I was like, you know how you are when, I was a little dramatic when I was in college. I was like, if I don't get this, I'm going to die. I must get this. And so I, unbeknownst to myself, was basically running a little lobbying campaign for myself to get this Disney internship. So I called everybody that I volunteered for, interned for, did check-in table, helped close down an event, literally knocked doors for, made phone calls for. I called all of them. And I said, please call into Disney and tell them that, I'm great for this job. I have to get this internship. And I remember the day, it was the final round of interviews, and it was me and this other guy. I was at community college. I wasn't that impressive on paper yet. And there was this guy, and I just remember him as this very preppy guy. He was at from USC. And I'm just trying to paint the picture for you. And I was in the waiting room with him, and I thought, oh God, I'm not going to get this internship. He's at USC. The office had a ton of USC connections. He had family connections, his uncle used to date the SVP or something like that. So I was just oh great, I'm not going to get it. But I went in and I did my homework and I killed the final interview. And then on top of that, we had everybody calling in saying, you have to hire Joanna, you have to hire Joanna. So I did get the internship, and the Disney ladies, my bosses at the time, they said, we're not going to lie to you. You were not our first choice. We actually didn't think you were going to make it to the final rounds, but pretty much people gave us no choice. We felt like we had to hire you. So they're we're kind of stuck with you. We joke about that now because it sounds kind of harsh, but they were kidding. But that internship turned into a job. They created a position for me at Disney, which is every intern's dream. And all of that changed my life. That was a game changer for me. Every job or interview or meeting I've had since, Disney's had something to do with it. People see Disney on your resume and they're like, oh my God, everybody has a connection to Disney. And I had no clue at the time what those internships and volunteer opportunities that I did before, how that impacted me and my life so deeply. And I honestly wouldn't be here today had it not been for that. So they're very important. Please do them.
Anything else to add to internships or fellowships? Laquita?
I had an internship early on in my career with the state representative. So it really got my juices flowing for government affairs and politics. But not an internship, but I will say I was a tobacco lobbyist at one point. I worked for the #1 tobacco company in the country for about 11 years. That's where I learned a lot of what I know. This is a hard industry, in particular for people that look like me, myself, and you. But I stuck to my guns and I learned. Again, always be a student. I learned how to make the deals. I learned how to speak. I learned, and it all feeds into that boldness, right? I was one of several that were the outer-facing person for the industry and changed it, right? I also did and you talked about the ERGs. I was a co-chair of our Black ERG for the tobacco company, another one, right? Another bold move. But each time, as you say, you look and maybe you're not going to think you're not going to do well, but each time you learn something from it. So, and now I work with Chile and the Congressional Black Caucus Institute for their fellows. And so I now am a mentor for them. So I may not have been a fellow, but I know how and what is needed, and I can be that voice and that helpful hand. So
Yeah.
that's my
Well, thank you.
I
contribution.
might chime in and just say that I think to Joanna's point and Laquita's point, like mentors are so important, but I feel like people may get discouraged, like, oh, I'm emailing this person, they haven't wrote me back, like, oh my gosh, like, why do I even do this? Keep trying. People are busy. They, you know, don't let one no close the door. Keep pushing and meet everybody, talk to people, set up coffees. And so if they say no the first time, maybe, hey, August is slow for you, maybe like keep trying.
Right.
And then like once those doors are open, you can call those people and have them lobby for you, advocate for you for that job. So it's really important.
That's good to add to that. I've got 2 more questions, so hopefully you've figured out what questions you want. And then I know Mauricio's gonna tell me if there's some questions from the Zoom. So there's been a lot of conversations about being your authentic self. And I was recently at a women's conference, and you know, we talk about it with our interns, our fellows, and they've heard me and others talk about this as well. It's hard sometimes to figure out when you're representing a diverse community of color, to say, okay, what part of my authentic self is it okay to bring, or is it not, or when do I bring it? How do I bring it? And it was interesting in this conference that I attended. I have to look up the name of the woman because I don't remember her name. I remember her face, but she said, in the many situations, we're talking about bringing your authentic self, not bringing your whole self all the time. So how do you manage that? So if you can, whoever wants to go first, just to share with the audience, how do you bring that? How do you bring your authentic self to work? Any tips, any suggestions?
If I may do say that first, you have to read the room. You have to read the room. You can't bust in with your authentic self each and every time. It could be a version of yourself, a version of that authenticity. But you have to, and that's one skill that of any executive or anyone working in corporate America with legislative, political, is read the room. You know, you're not gonna come in busting in if it doesn't call for that, right? And how you bring your authentic self, because you yourself will get tired of being the fake person. You can't look in the mirror and acknowledge what you're doing, who you are, and other people see that, then you know that you're not bringing your authentic self. You can't morph into someone else. You can be the best you, and only you can do that. So that's how I think that's how the test for authenticity is if you're bringing yourself. Now, I'm not saying that you're always right. There are sometimes you need to modify things, and that's just growing up. But if you stay true to yourself, there's no mistaking who you are and who you represent, right? So, but always again, I go back to this, keep learning, and yourself changes. You may have the core that stays the same, but there are various things that may change. It may be brighter, and it may glow, or they may be dull, whatever. You put that aside. I had to learn, you know, that sometimes your boldness could be off-putting to some people, or it could be, I don't know. You just have to learn how to listen. And I am at my age, and I'll be 50 in March. I'm still learning how to do that. Still learning to balance that out. But never mistake, I am still my authentic self in each and every time I turn around. So there may be different versions of it. So.
Different versions of it. Okay,
Different
cool.
versions,
Who's
yeah.
next? Who wants to share? Brandon?
Yeah, we're not one-dimensional, right? I think these authenticity things, they're usually geared towards minorities, right? To Blacks or Hispanics, when you have like this stock image of what an authentic version of that person is. I mean, so just be your nuanced self, right? You don't have to go in guns blazing every time. that there's an issue. Like sometimes I let things rise, sometimes I speak up, but it's like I just play it by ear. Like you read the room is what she said. And I think that's like the best advice. Read the room, keep your job, read the room.
Keep your job in the room. I love it. Okay, anybody else?
I'll just say, like, thank you. Thank you. I used to be embarrassed about certain things. So I'm Mexican. I'm from Southern California, and I actually didn't grow up speaking Spanish because when my mom came to this country, she was like forced to speak English like immediately, and then she was in school and didn't. It was just before this was way before like English is a second language programs, and so it was like kind of traumatizing. And so she was like, "You're never going to be in that situation." So I never grew up speaking Spanish. My brothers and sisters after me did. We learned that's not how you do it. You got to speak both languages. But anyway, I was always like ashamed of that. And it made me feel like I was like less Hispanic or I was like less Mexican, which is not true because I grew up culturally Mexican and I am just as Mexican as like the next person, you know? And so I think the advice about read the room, know your audience is great. But I think when you're just kind of honest about like who you are, you're going to find other people in the room. When I came to DC and I started meeting other Latinos and Hispanics in government affairs, I realized I'm actually not that special. Like they had the same exact story that I did. And we only knew that because we were honest about it with each other. And I think that's why having spaces like Chile is really important, or the Congressional Black Caucus Institute, because those are safe spaces for you to really be yourself and talk to other people that are just like you. And you realize, oh, you know what? I'm actually not as like silly or different as I thought. And then when you go out, you're like, yeah, I don't actually know Spanish, but I'm Mexican and I have every right to be here too. So I think these spaces are really important for like being comfortable and like really discovering who you really are.
Perfect, thank you.
I would just
anything-
say
go ahead.
that safe spaces and like, being very comfortable with yourself, but then also recognizing when maybe somebody like, I never really met I'm from Maryland, I'm an East Coast girl. Diversity was everywhere around me, but knowing that other people don't experience that. So recognizing when someone might be a little bit shy or a little bit like, I have a question, embrace it. Be like, no, my parents are refugees from Vietnam. We're ethnically Chinese, like jump in, like make them feel comfortable. Cause I would say like nobody made us feel comfortable when we were younger. I want to make people feel comfortable now.
Yeah, anything else to add, Ernesto?
Yeah, I would just say, as long as you lead true to who you are, your authentic self, and yes, read the room, obviously, in different occasions. But if you're comfortable with who you are, you will perform. You will perform well. You will do well. Others will notice you. It's very noticeable once you're very comfortable in your own skin. I can tell you that in the beginning, in the department when I first joined, I didn't feel comfortable coming out as a gay man in various settings because it's a very conservative, not in the political sense, but in the sort of cultural sense environment. And it was once I just gave that up that I just told myself, others talk about their wives, others talk about their husbands. So why can I talk about my partner? Right. So it wasn't until that point that I started feeling comfortable in my own skin that I started feeling, like I was actually delivering, it just translates to the work, to the things that you do. And people notice. That's what I would add.
Thank you. So this is my last question for the group. And it's not a question that we told you were going to have. So, because I know they're looking at their notes. This is not a question you have. So, and this is a question that I've been asked before and it made me think about this too. So going back to when you were graduating from college, remember senior year, besides just, God, I can hardly wait till I'm out of here. Between there and now, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your senior graduating self?
So I'm going to start.
Go ahead.
Okay. I would say that something I learned, I think I used to think that, well, no matter what, if you work hard, you're going to be fine, which is true. You need to work hard, definitely work hard. But the thing that has been very clear to me throughout time is that the number one most important thing I have in value, it's not the diamond bracelet my husband gave me or my Louis Vuitton or my car or my house. No. The most important thing that I own, that I have, is my relationships. My relationships have gotten me everything and everywhere. Obviously, it's paired with hard work. You have to work hard, but the relationships that you make and that you keep, keeping up with people. Sometimes I think, especially again in DC, if someone like isn't in a certain position of power or something like that, and you just discard them and don't follow up with them, let me tell you, in this world, it's a small and like incestuous world. People always come back around. Keep your relationships, be kind to people, and like truly focus on your relationships. It is the most valuable thing you will ever have in your life, in my personal opinion. So relationships are everything.
All right.
I think I would say relationships are everything. I would also say, I would let like someone didn't email me back. I'm very discouraged. I'm never gonna like reach out for a coffee ever again. Like I would tell myself back then, that's one little thing in your life. Like move on, be positive, keep going, keep advocating for yourself, keep pushing for yourself, and don't let like one little thing deter you from your path.
Thank you. Laquita?
Always reach back to your better memories. Those college memories and the sororities and everything else are still ingrained in me because you don't get those days back, and they help you. We don't know that back then it was showing you interpersonal skills. It was showing you how to coalesce with people, how to coalition build. We didn't know it's what it was, but those experiences, every experience helps you go forward.
Calm down, you're 22. There's like a lot of life ahead.
Yep,
Like,
yep.
don't be so stressed.
Yeah.
Like, just calm down.
Calm down. I love that. Calm down. Whew. Everybody felt that one, right? Woo, woo. Yeah. Ernesto?
Yeah, so for sure remain calm. And also I'll say, remember the things that keep you grounded. So your family, your significant other, your community, keep going back to those. You'll find a plethora of advice in those that you may or may not use, but just going back to that and remember, that those are it, it's your folks, it's your people. That has served me well in my career. And one thing that I was just sharing with Joanna before we came in the room earlier, one thing that really keeps me grounded, and I know some might sound a little cheeky and emotional and whatnot, but it's something I do every time I come back from an assignment abroad, whether it was Mexico, Afghanistan, Italy, etc. Immediately, the day after, a couple of days after landing, I just take a walk through the National Mall, and it gives me the goosebumps, and it just reminds me, this is why you're doing this. This is why you're here. That keeps me grounded. I found that to be one of the things that keeps me grounded, and I'll continue to do it for the rest of my career.
All right.
And I have
Thank you.
one more piece to say.
Okay.
Your mother and your father are the two people who are going to always keep you grounded. No matter how high you get, no matter what you do, no matter how important you are, who you eat with, and you work for Pelosi, you work for Schumer, you work for whoever, they are the two individuals that have the right to bring you down and say, you're not as big and important. Remember that.
Staying
love it.
humble. Yeah, staying humble. is
Stay
huge.
humble. Yeah. Mauricio, do we have any questions from the Zoom? Okay. Okay, he's gonna pull up a question from the Zoom for everybody. Our next speaker is here. I see you in the room, sweetheart. Thank you for being here. And we're gonna go ahead and get a couple of
But
questions
also
here.
remember, we live in DC. Do not forget where you are. DC is, this is the seat of, they say power, and it is power, but it's experiences, and they are here. One thing that I really appreciate about moving here from Texas, is that I could go to the grocery store and there is whoever, right? You can go walk down the mall. I'm a runner, I run the mall. There were members that ran the mall before I even knew I wanted to get to know them. So remember where you're sitting and relish in it and appreciate it. Sorry.
No, that's a good one. Marisa, what do we have a question? Is it for anybody in particular or the whole group?
The whole panel. So
Okay.
You're all very successful in your own fields. What makes you keep going? What's the motivating factors that help you continue to work with, even with all the success in your own very nature?
I can start if you want to.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Want to keep the
Okay, can
answers
you guys hear
short
me?
so we can.
Yeah, I think the number one thing that keeps me going is like knowing that what we do every day in the government affairs space impacts policy and changes people's lives. And knowing that really keeps me going, because there are days that are hard, but we're literally impacting policy that impacts people's lives. And that's huge.
Know your purpose. Otherwise, you'll just be flailing around. And it's okay if your purpose is not like a beautiful thing in a book. If your purpose is to make a bunch of money to take care of your family, that's amazing. Do that. My purpose was public service. I wanted to make an impact on people through policy. I did that. I am doing that at McDonald's now with some of the work that we're doing. So know your purpose.
One of my purposes that I really pull from is to know that other little Black girls that look at me. I have a niece who looks at me. She's 2. She may not know what she's looking at, but she looks at me. So that's, to me, making your family proud, your people proud, and also be an example that the next ones coming after you can come to you and use you as a resource, and as looking at you as a goal.
Definitely do something that you enjoy and have interests, like very interests outside of work that like can keep you sane.
All right, Ernesto?
I would say once you sort of find what you like, what makes you sort of tick, I can tell you my end was I was very, very nerdy and geeky in college when it came to international affairs and history of other countries and whatnot. So between that and public service, because my family came to this country as an immigrant family, including myself. So just putting those two together, that's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me motivated every day.
Okay, all right. How about a question here from the room? Anybody have a question? Nobody has a question? We have a question in the middle. We can get her microphone. And then we have a question in the back. Actually, what, Nicole, can you start with the person right behind you? And then we'll come back here. How about that? Okay. Is it? No? Is it on the front? This on the bottom?
Apologies.
This is the beauty of technology and the other side of the technology coin. Yes, okay, I've had it.
Okay.
Please stand and mention your name.
Yeah, of course. My name is Jonathan Valenzuela. I am a university student at UCLA. I'm interning for the summer here in DC. Thank you all for sharing your wonderful experiences. I wanted to ask you all, how do you carry your backgrounds and your identities in your, in your work, in everything you do? How do you carry your background and like your experiences with you?
Thank you.
Well, I carry mine at home first. At home, my home reflects who I am, and it's a lot like the home I grew up in. And when I'm out and away from home and I'm at things like this, I talk about my family and my experiences and my upbringing. So that is no discrepancy about I'm a Black girl from Dallas, Texas, out of Oak Cliff, and here I am. So.
I think Ernesto mentioned it, being comfortable with yourself and your background. And like that means working on yourself. And I think I go back to what I said earlier too, like don't let 1 or 2 people deter you from your path. So what in elementary school, they're like, oh, your food stinks. Like, that's not American food. If I let that kill, like if I let that hurt my soul, like I need to, you need to be, but you need to work on yourself to be comfortable there. And then you can bring that whole self to work.
Anybody else?
I'll just say that it's actually, my background has served me. Like when I work with, our Latino community, it's like so comfortable and they're comfortable and I'm comfortable and it serves like a broader purpose for what we do. So it's use it, harness it. It's helpful.
Anybody else?
I'd say that at some point, if you haven't already, you're going to work and be in environments in which you might be the only person that has a diverse background. And so don't let that to think that you need to mimic the others in the room and you need to mimic the other experiences in the room. You're there for a reason. You made it there for a reason. So be authentic, share your experience like Laquita talked about earlier, and just stay true to who you are.
Right. And the last question, dear, you have the microphone? Who's got the, please stand up and state your name.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Jauregui. I am a rising second-year student at the University of Miami Law, and I am the CHLI Law Fellow, along with my friend here. So my question is, when making a career decision, a big one, what's one question that you ask yourself?
Brandon, I see you going, I got this. I got this.
How can this, like, I have a vision for myself that I want to retire as, like, how does this get me closer to that? Like, it may not be directly in that field, but is there something transferable that I can use from this experience? So I started off in civil rights and I went to the governor's office. Now I'm a lobbyist, right? But I use skills from each of those places. So it's like, this is get me closer to my long-term goal. So that's how I make career decisions.
Okay.
Happiness. How does it make you feel? And can you see yourself in it? Because you never know, it may be 1 year, maybe 2 years, each step you go. But at the end of the day, and I think COVID and this pandemic has taught us this, no matter what you do what makes you happy. Not what makes your mother and your father happy, not what makes your professor and your whatever, but take those things into consideration. But what makes you happy? Because you're only going to do better in the places and things that are making you happy. There's a lot of unhappy people running around here. You don't need that no more. What makes you happy?
Awesome. Anybody else?
I would just say, follow your gut. Like there are a couple like jobs I've taken where there were like little red flags, but I forced it because I was like, well, I need to get this job and I have to do this. And it's like, you know, the next step. And then it definitely, you know, was not good at the end. And I'm like, I knew there was red flag. I should have listened to my gut and really, you know, not taken this position. I knew for X, Y, and Z reasons it wasn't going to work out. So your gut is there for a reason. Definitely listen to it.
I think for like your mid-career, like I feel like when you're just starting out, do everything, work really hard, listen, all the things that we said. But then I think mid-career, like work, know your purpose, and then how do you get to that purpose? And I always say like, will this help me in what's my next job? And how do I get there? Is this helping me to get to that place? Maybe it's not, or maybe I can find something else that gets me to that place.
Okay. Did we capture everything that you have? Okay, all right. So please join me in a round of applause or appreciation for our panelists here. So one of the things that I always say is that the wealthiest person can't donate and can't give it away, and the poorest person can accumulate it and sell it, and that's our time. We each have 24 hours in a day, and who we choose to spend that time with and what we choose to spend in doing and learning during that time is precious. So thank you for sharing some of your precious 24 hours with us today. And obviously for all of the participants who are here. I'm gonna ask that the group pause for a picture and that I get our next speaker in the picture. Cristian, if you could join us for the picture, as well as you've already learned, everybody who's here, I always include the bosses in the house. So the new boss who joined us is Leo Munoz from Comcast. If you can please join us for the picture. And I think that's it. Yeah. So come on up for a picture. Christian, come on up here and join us for the picture. Just so everybody can meet you as well. Yeah, come on over this way. So we first is the Lord with the big camera.
So eyes on
All right.
me,
All right.
everyone. And up top to the left, 1, 2, 3. We're gonna take a picture. And I'm coming this way, just follow me. Guys.
All right. Anybody else? Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Very much appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Position here to for the Chile team, we'll do the survey question after, but you probably figured it out. Okay, so we're in for a special treat here. So our next guest is Christian Martinez. He is the my comadres are getting busy over there in the corner. I know. Tejanas, oh my goodness. Yes, I know. Okay, So our next guest is Christian Martinez. He is the Deputy Press Secretary at Governor Youngkin's office for the state of Virginia. Christian is the highest ranking Latino in the governor's administration. So what a very special treat for us and for you to have him here. He started his political career in Lynchburg, Virginia as the campaign manager for a local Commonwealth attorney race. He joined the Victory Program for Ed Gillespie for governor. He then joined America Rising as a war room analyst. I just love that title, war room analyst, where he was promoted to vice president and war room director in less than a year, developing rapid response and opposition research skills along the way. After working for over 100 House races, boy, he must have some good stories, and 30 Senate races, he joined Bullpen Strategy Group as a communications director before joining Governor Glenn Youngkin's gubernatorial campaign as the rapid response director. He received a bachelor's degree from Virginia Commonwealth University. Please join me in a very special round of applause for Christian Martinez. Thank you. Just so you know, we also have some people on Zoom.
Oh, great.
Yeah, all
Thank
righty,
you.
gracias. There you go, dear.
Thank you so much, Marianne, for that wonderful introduction. I'm Christian Martinez, Governor Glenn Youngkin's Deputy Press Secretary and photographer. I'm so excited to be with you all here today. This is a new feeling for me. Normally, when I attend events like this, I'm standing in the back with media, or I'm backstage, or I'm running around taking the governor's photo while he's delivering the speech. So now that I'm up here, I am reminded of FDR's advice about public speaking, which is be brief, be sincere, and be seated. I was born in Peru, and for the first 8 years of my life, I was raised by a single mother who worked her entire life to give me the world. We left Peru when I was 2 months old. My mother's job took us to countries such as Colombia, Ecuador, Costa Rica, and Mexico. I arrived in America on a cold December day in 1999, speaking zero English. And I could tell you endless stories about me being picked on in school, where kids would make me say curse words without my knowledge, just an earshot away from teachers. And those teachers would then drag my mother in. And for a long time, that felt like an endless cycle. So because of that, in 2000, my summer was spent in school in the back of a classroom. And the way that I remember it as a kid is that one day English just clicked. And I worked hard not to have an accent, because to this day, I see my mother get mocked for having one. And it's soul crushing, and something that I never want to experience. In the years to come, my family in America expanded to my godfather, a 3-star general in the Air Force, my godmother, a 3-time presidential appointee, and my stepdad, a highly decorated colonel in the Air Force. But more importantly, someone who made my mother very happy and gave her the world. All 4 of them are the reason why I'm standing here today, their support and their endless love. It took my mother and I 13 years to become US citizens. But on July 4th, 2013, there we stood in front of Thomas Jefferson's home, Monticello, and we took the oath to defend and protect the Constitution of the United States. I don't remember a time when I didn't feel like an American. I love this country. I love the opportunities I love that it has offered me, the friends that I've made, the people I've met. But now I'm working alongside the best governor in the United States to serve all Virginians. And I stand here as a living embodiment of the American dream. My political career started in the Bible Belt of Virginia as a campaign manager for a small Commonwealth attorney race in Lynchburg. 3 months, I slept on a couch in a basement of a supporter's home, spent all day door knocking, and experienced the thrill of running away from barking dogs that didn't want a piece of literature for my candidate. And all this just to end up losing in the primary. Afterwards, I joined the Ed Gillespie for Governor Victory program as a field organizer working out of Prince William County. And I spent the hot summer days walking 30 miles a day, trying to talk to as many Virginians as possible. We lost to former Governor Northam and some of the state legislatures in my region that had previously won by 10 and 15, 20 points, ended up losing by 10 or more points. And it was devastating, but that's historically what happens during the midterms. I left the campaign trail. I joined America Rising, an opposition research firm that works to define Democrats before they can define themselves through research and rapid response operation. I started off as a war room analyst, watching, listening, and reading about hundreds of races across the United States at every level, presidential down to the state legislature. There, I was quickly promoted to be the war room director and vice president. America Rising's war room is incredible. You have a team of 10 kids straight out of college, sitting in front of a laptop, 2 Mac minis, 10 televisions on the wall, just working in shifts from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., watching everything the opposition says and does, waiting for them to slip up, flip-flop on a position, or in the case of Ben Jealous, curse out a Baltimore Sun reporter for asking him about his socialist policies. Ben Jealous went on to lose that race against Governor Hogan later that year. I spent 4 amazing years at America Rising before joining their sister company, Bullpen Strategy Group, as the communications director. However, the 9-to-5 job just wasn't for me. And I knew that I needed to get back on the campaign life. And it just so happened that a man that at one time had a 1% name recognition had just won the convention in Virginia to be the GOP's gubernatorial nominee. And the campaign for the former co-CEO of Carlyle was looking for a rapid response director. I joined that campaign in early June, and boy, it was like trying to jump on a train that was already full steam ahead. Terry McAuliffe had negative ads out. His comms team was working to pitch negative stories against us. But luckily for us, there was plenty of material to dive into since Terry already had an extensive career within the Democrat Party. And of course, he had already been the governor of Virginia. There are a lot of campaign stories I could tell. However, I will say in the final weeks leading up to the election, we could feel that what started out as a campaign became a movement that was sparked by Governor Youngkin and put into overdrive when Terry McAuliffe openly said during a debate that he didn't think that parents should have a say in their children's education. I remember that same night after the debate, we were able to clip his words. Our creative director cut an ad and we had it running up on Fox News within hours. The rest, as they say, is history. And we ended up winning that night. And Governor-elect Youngkin came up to me and asked me not to go anywhere, to stay and serve the Commonwealth. Today, I get to travel with him all over the state, see firsthand how he's improving Virginia and making it the best place to live, work, and raise a family. So now that I've told you about a little bit about my life and career, I believe this is the part of the speech where I'm supposed to impart some wisdom and advice. One of Governor Youngkin's favorites is, in the Serengeti, there are 2 kinds of animals, the ones that get up early to go to breakfast and the ones that sleep in and are breakfast. So I believe in a few key things. First, there is no work-life balance. You heard me right. If you want to be successful, there is no work-life balance. Balance isn't a daily thing that you need, but something that through your voyage of life will even out. You should try to enjoy the journey on the way to your goals. One athlete called it the Mamba mentality. If you want something, no one's going to give it to you. You have to earn it. And the work doesn't stop there once you've earned it. You have to keep working hard to keep it, because you better believe there's someone younger, they're smarter and hungrier coming to take what you've earned. During Governor Youngkin's gubernatorial campaign, after the first debate ended, I stayed up all night, watched the debate twice, and I clipped what I thought we needed to push out, what we needed to pitch to reporters, and I clipped every time Terry McAuliffe told a lie. I sent emails out at 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning, and I knew that Terry's team was sleeping. And a campaign is not a 9-to-5 job where you can just put things on hold to the next day. A campaign is continuous with a deadline. Every hour matters, and I was not going to let his entire team outwork us. Second, surround yourself with people that you can learn from and challenge you every day. You never want to be the smartest person in the room. If you're not learning, you're not growing, you're not becoming better, you're not getting closer to achieving your goals and dreams. And when you surround yourself with those people, develop those meaningful relationships among workers, among your neighbors, among your friends. Cultivate those relationships into mentorships that will last a lifetime. And finally, have faith. I believe that things happen for a reason. There's a God that puts us in situations and places that we may never understand why. But you have to know that when life gets hard, and it will, because there are always seasons of tribulations that go with seasons of triumph, just remember that there are no diamonds made without pressure. So have faith and find the core values that you will never compromise. Hold on to them and trust that they will lead you in the right direction in life. No one ever shares the same journey. We all have different destinations with unexpected stops along the way. And I hope that in some way,
and sharing my story inspires and helps each of you. Thank you for having me here today to speak to you. And as you all go forward to become leaders, legislators, CEOs, ambassadors, and oh, by the way, perhaps even a governor, know that the world awaits your many contributions. Thank you and God bless.
Does anybody have a question? Any questions, any possible questions on Zoom? Anybody? No?
Answered all the
You
questions.
got,
Just
you got
covered all.
clear, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you. Okay, let's see here. I'm gonna move on here. Before we move to the next conversation, I'm gonna ask the team if you can pass out the survey. So we're gonna ask for your help. Just hold on a second. Christian, check your notes there. I think you took part of my notes. No? Okay, por ahí andan. All right, so I'm gonna, my notes in regards to the survey. So we're gonna ask if you can help us with the survey that we're doing. So the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute just started conducting some research. It kind of happened organically. This particular project is in regards to imposter syndrome. So we're asking students, recent college students, young adults, if you could please contribute and help us out with this survey. We're gonna take about 4 or 5 minutes to give you time to do it. If you're on Zoom, there is a link that you can just click on, so you can do that via Zoom as well. What we're going to be doing is collecting the information, and then we will also be sharing, once we publish the information, including the findings. The goal is to be able to share so that we can provide additional support and guidance for interns, fellows, and young adults, and maybe even present some of those tips next year at this leadership conference. We know that many of us growing up, and maybe even now still at jobs in different places, we have felt imposter syndrome. And so we want to be able to support you and others in overcoming that, and also just learning from you and what has helped you and maybe your colleagues. We're also going to ask it if you're interested in doing and contributing with the second phase of this research. It includes a 20 to 30-minute interview. It's a confidential interview. If you're interested in doing that, you can just raise your hand afterwards, or after the next session, come up to Fradeli. Raise your hand, dear. Fradeli's in the front in the green, so you can't miss her. If you're interested and can help us out with that additional research, she will provide you the next steps. And for those who sign up today, we'll get a Starbucks gift card, but you have to go see Fradeli. And then if you're able to help us online, for those on Zoom, we will go ahead. There'll be another link that you can click on in the chat, sign up to do the interview. And then the week of your interview, you'll get an email from Fradeli with an Amazon gift card. So don't think that we're forgetting the people who are on Zoom as well. So if you don't mind, we can take 4 to 5 minutes. Yes, sir. Okay, let me answer this way. I'm not taking the survey. Yeah, no, we really want to try to get it for young adults, and specifically for that age group that we're looking for in the research. So thank you very much for that question. I appreciate it. So we're gonna pause here for about 4 minutes, and then probably just raise your hand here when it's time to do that. So go ahead. We've included an envelope so you can, confidentially put the information, fold it up, put it in the envelope, leave the envelope on the desk, or you can give it to Fradeli later on. That's fine. And then for those of you on Zoom, obviously it's a confidential. Go ahead and just submit that when you're done. And I'll be back in 3 minutes with the next group. There it is. Okay. So thank you for helping us with the survey. If you have it already completed, you can leave it on the desk. And then again, for those on Zoom, thank you again for your participation and for your support. Again, Fradeli is here up in the front. If you have any questions or you want to just talk to her about the research later, would greatly appreciate that as well. Next, I'm going to introduce our moderator for the next piece of the conversation here on civic engagement. He's going to introduce the panelists, but please join me in a warm welcome to our moderator here. Michael is the current Vice President of the Chile Alumni Association and Director of Coalitions at the Libre Initiative, a national organization dedicated to empowering the Hispanic community to reach their full potential by promoting and fighting for freedom-oriented solutions at the state and federal level. At Libre, he leads government relations, grassroots, and regularly appears on Spanish language media such as Univision and Telemundo to comment on public policy. Michael graduated from American University here in Washington, D.C., and lives with his wife, Adriana, in Loudoun County, Virginia. He is also an alumni, specifically of the Chile Gateway to Madrid International Program in 2010. Please join me in welcoming Michael Monroy. All right. Michael, you can sit here and work from there or start here, como quieras. All right, thank you. On the side? Oh, there it
Okay.
goes.
All right, can you hear me?
Okay.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you, Marianne. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Technical difficulties have been solved. As a gentle reminder, we will have a question and answer opportunity towards the end. And for those connected via Zoom, please share your questions in the question and answer box. Those joining us here in person, please hold questions until the end. It is a pleasure to be here today as we discuss civic engagement with insightful leaders. To introduce our first panelist, Neri Martinez is the Minority Staff Director for Ranking Member Senator Tim Scott at the U.S. Senate Committee on Aging. She was previously the Chief of Staff for the Office of Economic Impact and Diversity for the U.S. Department of Energy, serving the Honorable James E. Campos. Prior to her government experience or service, she was the former Executive Director of the Republican State Leadership Committee's Future Majority Project, spending over $30 million to recruit, train, and support over 120 new diverse candidates and over 600 new women to local office in all 50 states. Neri received her BBA from Florida International University, International Business Honors in Political Science, and a Global Master of Arts at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University. Our next panelist that will be joining us is Kevin Kosar. He is a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, AEI. He studies the US Congress, the administrative state, American politics, election reform, and the US Postal Service. Before joining AEI, Dr. Kosar was at the R Street Institute, where he served as Vice President of Policy, Vice President of Research Partnerships, and Senior Fellow and Director of the Governance Project. He has written several books, and his articles and opinion pieces have appeared in The Hill, National Review, The New York Times, Politico, and The Washington Post, among others. He has a doctorate and a master's in politics from New York University and a bachelor's degree in political science from Ohio State University. And our next panelist is Juan Rosa. He is the National Director of Civic Engagement at the National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials Educational Fund. NALEO is the leading nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that facilitates full Latino participation in the American political process, from citizenship to public service. In his current role, Juan leads a team that engages Latinos directly to assist them in becoming US citizens and frequent and informed voters. He received a BA in political science and a master's degree in public administration from the City College of New York. Let's give a round of applause for our panelists. So we have a good round of panelists here, very, very well credentialed. I assume have great stories to share, some insights on the topic of civic engagement. You know, that opportunity where we see something happen in the community, we get involved to create change, whatever that change may be in your view. And so let's start with Kevin Kosar, who's an expert, as mentioned before, on US Congress and American politics. And he's written several fascinating books on the subject. My question for you, Kevin, is what sparked your interest to study politics and civic engagement? And do you have any inspiring or fun stories of your involvement in civic engagement from those early years?
All right. Not sure if the mic's coming on or not. Do my best.
Let's see.
There we go. Team effort. There's a lesson for you. Have helpful people around you. Yeah, no, my interest in politics stemmed directly from my mom. Dad was not much around. Mom had 6 kids. And yet one thing she did have time for was to sit each night back in the day when there was a 6:30 news hour. And that's where you got primarily your national news. I wasn't here in DC. I was in a smallish city in Ohio. And as far as sources of information, that's what we had. My mother was also a journalist and later worked in government, kind of doing public relations, public information stuff. And she volunteered in democratic projects and elections. And sometimes, you know, she dragged me off to an event where we had to sit for hours and lick envelopes and stuff them with mailers. But at least we got free pizza. So as a kid, that was cool. So I did not imagine I was going to have a future in politics. I kind of stumbled into this, but I think that mom thing kind of planted the seed that ultimately grew. And, you know, when I got out of college, you know, I thought, well, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do with my life, so I'll just go to graduate school and keep studying political science. And I thought as I was going down that path that I was gonna become a professor. And then I, you know, by twist of fate, decided to take an internship here in Washington, DC. And when I saw kind of governance up close versus what I had been reading in the books, my mind just went, and I got very excited because it was all more complicated than I had ever imagined. Despite all those years of schooling, I was still very naive. And that was cool because I found myself trying to figure stuff out. I'd always liked trying to figure things out, and trying to figure out how to make Congress work became a central problem for me. You know, you see the gridlock and the nastiness and et cetera, and you go like, wow, this is an interesting problem. You got 535 people drawn from all over America, different walks of life. They're thrown in a big ornate building and they're told, cooperate on important things to the country. That's inherently complicated endeavor. And what kind of grew out of, you know, the longer I spent on the Hill kind of watching this sort of stuff was a curiosity of like, can I figure out ideas and find smart people to help me figure out ideas that can make coordination better? And, you know, for the past 8 years now, we've had this congressional reform movement going. And this was not something where we showed up like, hey, we're the smarties, we're going to fix your problems. What we basically did is we went to congressional staffers and members of Congress, and we said, it's our perception that you guys are pretty miserable. You don't like the toxic politics. You don't like the fact that you can't get things done. You know, you work real hard, you get a draft bill, and it just sits. What a drag, you know? Would you like things to change around here? And of course, they're all like, yes, of course. Okay, we all agree on a problem. Let's start figuring out solutions together. And out of nowhere, you know, this congressional reform movement grew. And as fate would have it, just this morning, I was testifying on Capitol Hill before the Select Committee on the Modernization of Congress, which was created 3 years ago to kind of tackle this problem of how do you get a legislature that was crafted in the 20th century to be able to handle the demands of the 21st century. And it's a great bunch of people, and they're working on these problems. And, you know, when I was a kid, I could have never imagined myself being here. I was terrified of public speaking. I didn't even like being around people.
I was just a lonely nerd sort. So you never know where life's going to lead you. And I've been very fortunate in this journey. And I know some people who have fantastic careers are very methodical in planning their career, and God bless them. I was never that guy. You know, I tried to be in good places and be around smart people and be around good organizations, but I was ultimately following my passion of kind of curiosity and trying to figure out how things work. And blessedly, the pieces came together.
So my next question is for Kevin and either of our three panelists. So if you guys want to chime in, if you want to turn on your mic as well, just to be ready. Can you talk to us about the growing Hispanic Latino vote in elections? You know, it seems that every year it's the growing Latino vote, it's making an impact, it's deciding the races and the outcomes in Congress and local, state, and national elections. You know, what does that mean for future policy? If you guys want to share some thoughts, because I know you're all well experienced in this space.
For my part, I would say it's the most exciting development in American politics in generations. It's the introduction of large demographic. And it's the introduction of a large demographic. You know, we have this binary political system with Democrats and Republicans, not too many third parties, not a parliamentary system, anything like that. And the Hispanic Latino vote is up for grabs. And because so many are new, their views on like, what's a problem? What do we care about? What are our priorities? How do we think you should tackle this sort of stuff? What are the tools that should be used? All that is fresh. It's new. It's injecting new life, new ideas, new challenges into the system, which I think is terrific. Because, you know, when you have the same kind of demographics banging into each other year after year, eventually they get sorted into separate parties. You know, you get the kind of older white rural who ends up in the GOP, African-American often vote very heavily demographic, and groups can become captured to politics, and politics can get sclerotic and deadlocked. This is opening up everything, and it's very interesting to see what's happening. You've got the GOP running after the Democratic Party votes. It's exciting, and we've got a third party announced now, and there's no doubt in my mind that they are going to go all in to try to reach the communities. So that's exciting.
Well, I mean, I've been out of the campaign game for a little while, but I can't say I don't still follow it, you know? Yeah, one of the things I find interesting about the Latino vote is that it's obviously not monolithic, as everyone knows, and they think about that, you know, because the reality is that the US is not monolithic. I mean, it's really regional. So people tend to vote in a particular fashion, whether Hispanic, Black, you know, white, rural, urban. I mean, just really depending on the region and sort of the environment that you grow up and what influences you. So the US is very diverse geographically. Obviously, we talk about red states and blue states, but there's red counties and blue counties and specific cities that tend to lean one way or another. So all that in mind, the Latinos that live within each one of these counties or cities or states also reflect the state to a certain degree. So I'll give you some examples of obviously what the major trends are that people are following now is that, you know, Florida has, you know, Cubans and Puerto Ricans, and, you know, the way that they came to the States, obviously Puerto Ricans are Americans, but you know, coming stateside from the island, or the way, you know, Cubans or a lot of folks from Miami, now Venezuelans and Colombians and, you know, Nicaraguenses and just like the whole of pretty much all of Latin America in Miami, is for a variety of reasons that then influences your politics. So if you happen to come from Venezuela or Cuba or Nicaragua during the Sandinistas, and the country of origin, you know, was taken over by a leftist dictatorship, then you tend to lean right or conservative in this country, even though, you know, you didn't necessarily know, or your family didn't know, you know, if they were political or not when they arrived. But that tends to be a trend that is also mimicked with Vietnamese or South Koreans, for example. So that seems an interesting dynamic. And then you have then the concentration of these folks in a particular place. With the Puerto Ricans, for example, I mean, they're American, they come, they can vote, you know, and so It really just depends on maybe how you affiliated when you were on the island, which isn't necessarily just Republican or Democrat, it's pro-statehood and anti-statehood. But if you're, pro-statehood and you're part of the Republican pro-statehood, and that is a big chunk of the people leaving the island now, then obviously that's going to influence politics stateside, wherever, Puerto Ricans decide to stay versus on the island. And I think one of the more interesting dynamics that I got a chance to experience when I was recruiting women and minority candidates in the country at the state level was, not where I'm from, Miami, so I know that pretty well, and Florida pretty well, but I really got to understand the Southwest in a much greater level. I have not been to the border particularly. I'm not an expert on any policy per se, and certainly not immigration policy. But I mean, you are seeing the counties on the border right now that are heavily Hispanic. You're seeing the highest growth for the Republican vote in those places. And so that is sort of a regional nuance that's important to remember when you think about the Latino vote or you think about the Hispanic vote. It's also important to consider, the intrastate migration that happens with the Hispanic community. So, if you're from Chicago and you're like done with Chicago, then you move to, Indiana, just like an hour away, your politics tend to change once you go to Indiana. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't, right? Sometimes you bring your politics to Indiana and sometimes you change once you get there. Same with, Hispanics, mostly Mexican from California, that then moved to Arizona or other parts of the Southwest. And now you're seeing big growth in, Georgia, in the Midwest, and some of these other places. Over time, the assimilation to particular states, regions, or even the attraction to moving to a particular state has a lot to do with maybe your political leanings or your ideology. So all of that is important to take into account. So what I've seen in the past, 2012, so we're like 10 years, in the past 10 years of the sort of diversity game of, campaigns and politics and the vote, as a Republican operative, I have observed that this trend of Hispanics moving towards Republican Party in greater numbers has been interesting because it just every year seems to be, the assumption was 10 years ago that the more Hispanics engaged in the vote, the more that they voted, the more Hispanics grew in this country, the more Democratic, the community would be. And what we're seeing is actually the opposite. We're seeing, and concentrated in particular counties, states, and communities where you're seeing a greater growth for Republican voters. It varies, so it's not as a whole 50-50, but as a whole, it may be 60% Democrat, 40% Republican, but in particular pockets, you might find, greater fluctuation in this community. So I know that's a long-winded answer, but I mean, I think if you're a political junkie or you're interested in demographics or your own community or trying to really understand Hispanics as a whole in this country or trying to understand the country as a whole, which I've had to learn myself, then it's important to know that, people are influenced by a lot of things. So Republicans are pretty excited in some about Hispanic votes and Hispanics voting because the community is tending to lean more towards Republicans, at least this year. And recruitment, I'm happy to say, has really blossomed, even though I've been out of the recruitment game for a while. The committee I used to work for is still recruiting, and so is the NRSC. And the NRCC has like a phenomenal cadre of Hispanic female candidates that are actually winning seats that Democrats normally have won before. So I think what you're going to see is that sort of momentum change the way that politics is played.
Yeah, appreciate your insight, Neri. That just showcases the diversity of thoughts, within the Latino community, depending on where you are in the United States, in your country of origin. I think that's something to celebrate in both parties, whatever your views may be. It's something that we should all celebrate.
Sure.
Give you some.
Thank you so much, Michael. So again, I'm representing a nonpartisan organization, the NALEO Educational Fund, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about NALEO later on. But we are focused, and first of all, good afternoon to everyone who's here and who's on Zoom. We are focused on expanding the Latino electorate. Since 1976, where our membership organization was founded, and since 1981, when our C3 community serving organization was founded. So our main goal is to expand the Latino electorate year after year, cycle after cycle. We do so through three main strategies. One of them is to develop the capacity and professionalism of Latino elected and appointed officials to better serve their communities. So if you got elected or if you got appointed, you should be doing a good job of representing your community, be that community mainly Latino or diverse or not Latino at all, like in some cases. So that's one of our strategies. The second strategy is to advocate here in Washington and in state houses around the country for better policies to allow Latinos to participate in our elections and to become US citizens. Right now, there are 9.1 million people, legal permanent residents, who are eligible to become US citizens, 41% of which are Latinos. So that is a group of people that we have to continuously engage to enter the system through citizenship and then become voters. And lastly, the department that I lead, we work on mobilizing, informing, and empowering the community, again, to become voters, to learn what elections are happening in their communities, and to understand the diversity of options that they have to vote, and to, again, become US citizens, and to participate in our census, the decennial census every 10 years. I'm gonna leave it at the last census 2020, revealed that there's 62.1 million Latinos in America. There was a 5% undercount of the Latino community, which is double the undercount of the 2010 census. Again, there was a 5% undercount of the Latino community. And even with that 5% undercount, if you want to be technical, 4.99%, but even with that undercount, we reached 62 million Americans that are of Latino heritage. We are estimating that throughout the elections that are happening this year, primaries and the generals in November, 11.6 million Latinos are going to vote. So 62.1 million Latinos live in America today, 11.6 are projected to vote this year by Naleo Educational Fund. And we can get into the dynamics of why that is a little later. But as we speak about growth and promise, it's also important to talk about the things that need to be done, the policies that need to be adopted, the activities that need to be undertaken to continuously motivate the Latino community to make that power, that 62.1 million Americans who are Latino, that big power, and turn it into real political power and become real agents of change. Be that the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, or if you fluctuate between elections, whatever you choose as a community member, but again, that you have the power to really influence the decisions during election time. So I'd like to get into a little bit more later, but that's my take right now.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing that, Juan. Some exciting stats, and you're focused on really fascinating work over there at Naleo. We can talk about that a little bit if we have some time later, especially during the question session. I want to ask Neri, because we were talking a little bit earlier about what sparked your interest in civic engagement. I know you talked about Ohio, your mother. Well, Neri, can you talk to me about, I know you grew up in Miami, correct? What influenced you to get involved, in civic engagement and politics? I'm interested in that. You shared demographics changes in Florida, Miami today, but young Neri, when she started out, she knew nothing about all this. What sparked your interest? Share with our audience.
I mean, I still think I'm young, Michael, so I object to the assertion. Yeah, I mean, my family is not political, by the grace of God, we were able to leave Cuba with our life. And that's, kind of where politics began and ended for my family. They were not political in Cuba and they did not want to come and be political here. So that was, not a thing I grew up with necessarily, I mean, I did grow up in a community that was essentially very political, in Miami. My parents grew up in New York, so they didn't have that. But for me, I wasn't interested in like politics per se, Republican or Democrat campaigns or local elected official stuff or anything like that. what interested me in civic service or public service or anything to that effect was, when I was in high school, I got invited to come to DC for, a young, like a model Congress and a model UN group, right? And I was like interested in this kind of thing, and then I was like visiting DC and I was like, something was like sparking, during that time. And I'm not even sure how I got into those programs because I wasn't the greatest student, but somebody sent me over here. So yeah, and then I remember, serving on the Human Rights Council of the last thing that I had done, which is a model UN, and I was like interested in the human rights, right? So I'm on campus at FIU and I get recruited by the Free Cuba Foundation, which is an organization that supports the civic dissident, nonviolent resistance movements in Cuba, and the human rights situation there is obviously very dire. So I got interested in essentially activism work, and my family was from Cuba, but they didn't really talk about it much, so I had to like almost relearn a lot of things about the island and about its people and what was going on. But I became very interested in advocating for the rights of these individuals. And over time, I mean, that allowed me to come into a lot of political spaces. It also allowed me to come into a lot of diplomatic spaces. And, I met with global leaders and local political leaders and stuff. And I guess it just sparked a side of me, right? But I still didn't get involved in politics per se. My family, is not being political. My father was a reverend and everybody else just like did their own business. So it was either like go make money or, serve in the ministry, or if you're serving the ministry, you got to go figure out how to make money, because if you're doing your right, it's not gonna pay anything. So, there's like these two tracks, So I like sort of vacillated between, some private sector gig that made me money and then, serving as a volunteer or like working I spent 2 years as a social worker, helping homeless transition to housing or like doing something like that. And then figuring out how to sell real estate on the side. I don't know. Like I did both. I did, back and forth. And then, I just realized over about 10 years of avoiding politics that I was a very political person. And I realized this because I was doing, whether it was selling elevators, which I did for 3 years, or helping homeless transition into housing, or doing activism work, like everything I did it in a certain kind of way. I would like launch campaigns and build networks and like, talk to the people that mattered. And I don't know. So I just learned that I had a certain skill set, and a certain personality. And I should probably find a line of work in a city that I wanted to live in that would align with both my skill set and the lifestyle I wanted to live. And so here I am in DC working in politics, and I loved every minute of it. And that's just kind of been my journey. Was very personal, and it was very individual. It had nothing to do with the family. I'm still the only one that is in politics. I'm pretty much the only one that works for the man. No one else gets a paycheck that they don't produce on their own. So, the life that I live is pretty much unique to me. And I think that, you just come to realize that if you really love it, and you happen to be good at it, and you can, build a life doing what you love, what you're passionate about, what really drives you, and where you feel like you can make an impact. And if you're somebody that's like legacy driven or impact driven or service driven, then this is the kind of work that you get into. And so, that's why I'm here.
That's fascinating, Neri. I think you all just got a sneak peek at her upcoming autobiography book. So she may sign for you later today. Same question for Juan. So Juan, I know you and I haven't met before, but I took a look at your LinkedIn, and I'm assuming that you grew up in New York. Is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
So talk to us a little bit about growing up in New York and how that influenced your spark of interest in civic engagement, politics. I'm not sure exactly what your path was, but kind of like Neri, share a little bit about that with the audience.
All right, so we only have an hour, so bear with me. So thank you for the question. So I actually became interested in the idea of social justice when I was a child. I grew up actually until the age of 10 in a countryside of the Dominican Republic, a small town, Dominican, small town. You can go check, no running water, no electricity. Still today, there's Wi-Fi, but there's no running water and no electricity. And at the time that I became aware of the world around me, around the age of 6, 7, 8 years old, the government at that time had passed a land reform law in the Dominican Republic, by which they took lands that have been reappropriated by rich landowners and give it back to small mom and pop agriculture, rice growers. And my dad was one of those. But it just so happened that there's entrenched powers everywhere. And I remember distinctly my father having to escape at night to avoid being arrested by the police because the landowner whose land was removed or partitioned, not taken away, would pay off the police to harass people like my dad. So I never understood, my father works. My father, he hasn't done anything. Why is the police chasing my father? And that's stayed with me for a while until I could put words to what I felt, the rage that I felt. And that always kind of has fueled my interest in making the world just more equitable, just a little bit more equitable for everyone. You know, just not full-on revolution, transformation, just a bit more equitable for everyone. And in New York City, I kind of very normal, kind of like Neri, went to college. My local assembly member was teaching a course as an adjunct at the City College of New York. He said, you live in my district, you're taking political science, why aren't you in my office? I was gonna use a bad word, working for free, basically. And after a few rounds of that conversation, I started to intern for now Congressman Adriano Espaillat in Washington Heights in New York City. And the rest is history. I became involved in local politics. I did kind of like hardcore local politics. If anyone is from New York, Democratic clubhouse politics, you're always fighting someone in the same neighborhood. So I did that for a while, kind of just like direct engagement to get a candidate elected here and there for various rounds of elections until NALEO came along, and I have worked in NALEO in my government capacity, helping to do citizenship drives. And when this opportunity came about, I think that I was ready to leave the sort of the day-to-day just partisan politics and move to another calling. And it just came at the right time in my life. I am thankful that I had all the experiences I had because they make me better every day, right? I kind of always go back to my experiences, knocking on doors, stuffing envelopes, making phone calls, getting hung up on, all the activities that you can imagine people doing at the very local level to get Democratic district leaders or county committee members, those arcane little positions that hold neighborhood political power in New York City politics till today. I was ready to let go of that and kind of embrace just a bigger calling. And that's how I became, that's how I am where I am today.
Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
That's great. I have a question. This could be for anyone, but we'll start with Kevin, since you're an expert on politics and you're doing some really good work at AEI. What would you say, in your opinion, respectfully, what is the top public policy issue at the moment? You know, something that maybe our audience should become more aware of, maybe consider getting involved with.
Where to begin? Where to begin? I mean, if we're talking about the federal government, the expanse of the federal government, the things that it contends with are massive. I mean, compared to 100 years ago when we had, half dozen departments, today we have 180 executive agencies that involve with pretty much anything. You know, the standards with this gorgeous facility was built were in part federal standards. Like, you don't see it, but it's there. And it's fantastically hard for me to say because so much of what strikes one as the most important political or policy issue is going to be personal. You know, my father-in-law is absolutely terrified at the state of global warming and climate and general health of the earth, oceans, that sort of stuff. He's all in on that. And I respect that. It's part of a product of his personal experiences. Me, I've been in some really low salience geeky stuff, like fixing the postal service, which, by the way, carried more than 100 million ballots in 2020, which is kind of important to a functioning representative democracy. But I don't think if you asked 100 people in America, you'd find one who would say, yeah, postal reform, that's top on my list. And I guess that's kind of a, I'm giving a lame answer to your question. I think that's one of the wonderful things about getting involved in politics, policy, and governance is that there are so many things you can work on, whether it's equitable access to healthcare for children, whether it's national park system, whether it's something local. There's so many places you can insert yourself and align whatever your peculiar passion may be, and then lean in and feel like, yeah, I'm doing something that matters to me, not so much to other people, but me. And this is what I care about. And when I ultimately retire and walk away from the game, I can look at it and go, I spent my time well.
Neri or Juan?
I mean, number one issue for all Americans is probably the economy. Always has, always will be. I mean, I'm just speaking in terms of polling, not what you should get involved in particularly, that's very personal, but just what the majority of Americans think of top of mind. Almost in every poll, regardless of party, and almost every year, people think about the economy. So, I mean, to get involved on the economy per se is like, okay, well, where do you begin? But I mean, it is an issue that people talk about more than anything is, certainly inflation and gas prices and food prices and stuff like that. But almost everybody in America talks about kitchen table issues. So I think, to Kevin's point, there are a lot of issues that are really important that aren't just the kitchen table issues that everybody discusses that I think are important. I mean, I'm not a policy expert, but I do care about, at the Committee on Aging, we talk about a lot of issues related to seniors, so if you're interested in that, we always have hearings, and we had a hearing today and we talk about these things. I've become a lot more interested in the issues of seniors because I turned 40 this year. So regardless of the fact that I think I'm young, I still think that, in the next 40 years, it's going to be my category, And, I had this joke where somebody was like, oh, you took this job to beat aging. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to remove it completely with policy. I'm going to eliminate the aging process. But yeah, I mean, I think about issues of health as well. I'm like a super foodie. So I think about issues like, why are school lunches so crappy? I mean, they shouldn't be so disgusting. So those are like the issues I think about, or like why, are there food deserts or things like that? I care about a lot of the issues that align with my value system and a healthy lifestyle, fresh food, produce, stuff like that. Like being a big foodie, those are things I think about, but I think about communities that don't have those resources or that don't have access to fresh food and how we can teach people to eat healthier. And I think about the healthcare system and especially that aging, as you start to age, a lot of disease is pretty preventable with health and nutrition. And I'd like to see, the United States develop a better culture of health and nutrition as a whole. My boss, who's ranking member Tim Scott on the committee, is actually a big fan of this as well. So we very much align on these sort of healthy battle aging, naturally thing. He did a field hearing last year in Charleston, South Carolina. So instead of talking about retirement or Medicare Advantage, he's like, let's talk about healthy aging. And I was like, okay, I'm with it. And so we talked about healthy aging, how you can age better, longer, healthier lives. He goes to the gym every day, from 3 to 4, he just eats healthy. And so we had a whole hearing on this, on community and faith and mental health and physical health. And as you age, it's important to be involved in each one of these things so you can age gracefully, live longer, be with your grandchildren, be active and stuff like that. So, I don't know. I mean, so as far as Committee on Aging, we talk about a lot of policy driven things, but we also talk about lifestyle issues and things that are important to people in America. So I just, what you want to focus on is really completely up to you. But I mean, I personally think some of those things are, important, but those are just my shtick.
Yeah, so I'm gonna take advantage that I'm last and do 3. So from the NALEO educational point of view, I think that any policy discussions that have to deal with voting rights and access to elections are very important things that you should look at. How do we, at the state levels, but also the federal level, kind of address the issues that were brought upon by the 2013 decision in Shelby County versus Holder, right? We no longer, our federal protections for elections are less and less after that. So now every state is kind of free to take whatever decisions they want on elections, which is fine. That's the way it works. But those protections that were there to protect the voting rights of folks like Latinos, African Americans, and other disenfranchised communities, those protections by the federal government are disappearing, right? So how do we come to common sense solutions at the federal level to put those protections back on? That is not a policy stance, and I do have my colleague Valerio Martinelli in the back, who is actually in charge as our policy person. I forgot the title right now, but he's really in our DC office and he's in charge of working at the federal level, but also with the states to protect voting rights for the Latino community. But again, anything that sort of has to do with making those protections stronger and kind of bringing them back would be something that I think you should probably all look at. Those are things that your generation is going to continue to grapple with. On a personal level, I think that education, right? The idea that is our education system really getting folks ready for the jobs of not the future, but the jobs of the present, right? I mean, everybody cannot end up working at McDonald's. At some point, we have to make that decision. So is our public education system preparing folks for the jobs of the present, not of the future, of the present? And lastly, I think that global warming and how the brunt of global warming is not felt, again, unequal, right? The poor communities are the communities that will bear the brunt of global warming. So I took three, two personal and one organizational, so enjoy.
So follow-up question to the theme you were talking about, working with immigrants, obviously with Nelio. Can you talk to us about the immigrant experience, or more so from the perspective of what civic engagement means to them? Because a lot of folks immigrate from countries where they don't have the right to speak out, to get involved with their government. They feel that they're intimidated by that, but they come to the United States and the opportunities are abundant, right? To step in front of a microphone and give your thoughts without fear of repercussion. Give us a little bit of your thoughts on that, and if anyone wants to chime in from the panelists as well.
Yeah, so I think constantly educating Latinos who, again, they're Latinos, as we all know, that have sort of no relationship to immigration, right? Again, there's millions upon millions of Latinos whose border, their lives moved to the border, right? They were there and the border moved and they're now American citizens. So they have no sort of immigration relationship at all, right? But by and large, there is still sort of a substantive number of Latino community members who have some sort of relationship to immigration. Either they're immigrants themselves, their grandparents immigrated, their parents immigrated. So one of the things that we constantly have to do is, to your point, is to educate the community members about how the American political system works, right? And the idea that it's actually political systems, right? At the state level can be very different at the federal level. So it's always drawing those differences and constantly educating the community about you decide, right? The importance of being counted in the census is that it amounts to political power, right? The importance of voting is that your community gets taken more seriously. Besides you having the right to vote, is that your community is targeted for outreach by folks like Nuri and the committees she's worked with in the past, right? So it's constantly having that education, at the point that you made, Mike, about we often come from countries that have less democratic health than what we do here in the United States. And it's just that constant education of our community. I would say, though, that to your larger question about the immigrant experience, I think I wrote down 3 words that I think it's what immigrants really contribute how immigrants benefit the United States, right? One of them is immigrants by and large are resilient people. You got out from your home, you left your loved ones, you left the climate that you loved, the food that you loved, the colors that you loved, and you oftentimes came to a place. I mean, imagine coming from the countryside of the Dominican Republic to a January in New York. Just imagine, right? So that resiliency, I think it's something that the immigrants often bring to the United States, to our larger culture. There's ambition, entrepreneurship, right? I laughed, I was smiling when Nuri was talking about, well, I was doing social work in the morning and I was trying to sell houses in the evening, right? That's the immigrant attitude, entrepreneurship, make it work, make it count. And lastly, gratitude. I think we're grateful for everything that we get, and we express that gratitude often. So I just wanted to kind of leave you with those three.
Great. Well, we have a few more minutes left before we go to Q&A. So I have some panelist-specific questions. I'll start with you, Kevin. I see that you've made several broadcast appearances. You've published many articles, opinion pieces. For the folks in our audience and those watching that want to be able to mirror that type of success, right? To get their thoughts, what they're doing out in the community, out on more exposed, right? More people to be aware. What brief advice can you share with them to mirror that type of success?
Number one, polish your communication skills. Number two, make sure you have a real knowledge base so you can have substantive input to the conversation. And number three, relationships with people who work in media. I will tell you that the average editor, the average reporter has a bazillion people coming at them saying, I've got content to share. How do they pick amongst all that? Well, it's a lot easier if they're like, oh, I know Kevin, he's a friend of Lee's and Lee's good people and Lee speaks well of Kevin. That's a way they use to try to deal with the crush of work coming at them. The relationships are absolutely key. And I've worked those relationships throughout my entire life. And I've kept all the media contacts I make on a big grand email list, and I regularly reach out to them to let them know what I'm up to. And that way, if they have any needs for an expert to speak on a particular policy area, that I'm available.
And question for Neri. So, you obviously have an incredible professional background. You've sold elevators. You've worked in Republican politics, presidential administration, and now in the US Senate. What lessons can you share with our audience on how you successfully made those transitions, and maybe just like a quick piece of advice, like a good advice you received from a boss over those years?
Yeah, I think one of the secrets to longevity in anything is you have to be your most authentic self at every stage. But you should be willing to grow and learn and change. Always be willing to grow and learn and change. I think it's really important. The person I am today is not the person I was 20 years ago in some respects, and in other respects, it's the exact same person. I think really managing a sense of self-awareness and checking your ego as much as possible will help you see things and approach yourself in your life with greater opportunity. I think I'm a big opportunity person. I guess that's why I work for the opportunity agenda guy. But, I do feel like to be born in this country versus the alternative reality, which I'm very cognizant is very close to what it could have been for me, that makes me sort of want to seize the moment and seize it all, right? I mean, I just feel like the world can be your oyster. You can have it all. You should go for it all. There's no reason why the scope of possibility of things cannot be broad. You have to be willing to learn, grow, and change. And, when I spent 10 years not doing politics and I wanted to transition to politics, I mean, I had to do all that because I didn't know anybody in politics. Nobody helped me necessarily. I did have some people that helped me. Specifically, I will give a shout out to Omar Franco, and it's because you guys know him, but also because I was telling him this weekend that, he was someone that believed in me and gave me a chance. But I had a few people like that. I didn't have a network, Now I really try to spend a lot of my time helping people come up because I was appreciative of that. But yeah, you have to grow and learn and change and check your ego. The best things bosses have ever told me has been to listen. Listen. And I will tell you that I had many bosses to tell me to listen, and that was because I didn't. Okay. And every time I don't listen and I just think I know what I'm doing, I've got this. It's different than self-confidence to the ego. Okay. It always takes me longer to get to where I want to be. To shorten the time between where you are to where you want to be, you need to find the right people to tell you what to do, and you need to listen to them. And you need to begin by understanding that you do not know it all at any stage, at any point. If you think you do, you're going to stunt your growth. You're going to do yourself a disservice. You know, check your ego, understand you don't know it all, find somebody that helps you get to where you want to be, and listen to them, and then do it. Because if not, you're going to guide yourself into from point A to point B for how you haven't done it yet. So I do think that you have to be true to yourself. You have to follow your gut. You have to go for it and go for everything that you want to go for. And the scope of possibility is wide. But check yourself, understand that you don't have all the answers, and listen for the answer and talk to people and get their advice on things.
Yeah, great advice. Just listen. Who would have thought? Good advice. So we have one last minute, and this is a very open general question for anyone of our panelists. But are there any books, podcasts, videos, or any last piece of advice you can give to our audience to better prepare them to become civically involved if they're not already? So go ahead. If anyone wants to take this first.
I'll start this time. So every afternoon on NPR, they have the NPR Politics podcast. I recommend it. It's fun. It's nicely done. And you can avoid reading the whole day and then catch up at the end of your day. So 15 minutes, I recommend it. KCRW has a very good show called a podcast, Left, Right, and Center. And it's become very, very important to me in the last few years, in the last few months rather, because it's all about the idea of, to Nettie's point, listen to people, right? The idea of you don't have all the answers. And as we go into politics, a lot of my politics has always been about, I know the right solution, I know the right idea, I know the right candidate, and we're gonna fight to death for that candidate, idea, or solution. But we live in a plural society, right? And people have different ideas, and you have to get people to come to your side to get things done, right? So that podcast is really helpful because it, in a non-confrontational way, introduces you to two very different points of view about one topic. And I just think you become better rounded by listening time after time. So those two podcasts I recommend. And there is a Spanish philosopher, Daniel Innerarity, and he has a book called The Future and Its Enemies. And the idea is we are now living in the politics of grievances, the politics of being pissed off. So what can people in politics do to reduce that and to work on better solutions that don't cater to either side of the extremes? So I highly recommend that one as well.
I just thought I'd toss in briefly that to learn more about the various pieces of government machinery that can take politics and translate it into policy and make things better. There are some podcasts, devoted to each branch. AEI releases my Understanding Congress podcast, which is specifically designed to try to teach people about that complex beast that is Congress. There's also one devoted to the federal courts and the Supreme Court. There's a podcast by my friends over at George Washington University, which is dedicated to regulation. You think, oh, why is regulation? That sounds boring. Well, guess what? There are more regulations made each year which affect policy and affect people's lives than there are laws passed by Congress. Way more. Making policy through regulation is a huge thing. So understanding how that works, really, really important, really valuable if you want to be a change maker.
Yeah, I really do turn to my team for a lot of the things that I need to understand about policy. They're much better at it than I am. But I do think it's important. I'm a big fan of reading and I read a lot of books. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts, although I will say that, which is the Mark Thiessen one? The Spotify one? What the hell is going on? Podcast. That's the name of it, right? Yeah, it's okay. So if you look for it on Spotify, Mark Thiessen, he's still at AEI, yes? Yeah.
Washington Post.
Yes, and a Washington Post writer. He's really great. He has this podcast called What the Hell is Going On? And so if you're like hearing about things happening in Congress, then, you know, he will break down, well, what the hell is going on? So I mean, in a very simple sort of plain English way that you can understand it. So I highly recommend this podcast on Spotify. I read 2 books last year that really sort of changed the way I thought about things. And one of them was a book by Warren Berger. I'm happy to send this to the group too, but it's called The Book of Beautiful Questions. And it was being read by generals at the US Army War College. I attended a national security seminar there and I learned about it. We heard from the author. And it's about basically posing everything as a question, you know? So instead of like brainstorming, you're question storming, and you're learning to ask the right questions. And I know it sounds like basic critical thinking, but it was really fascinating book about even communicating in questions. And I thought that was very helpful. Another book that I read was by Chris Voss, and they were reading that too. And it was a book about negotiation, which I really enjoy books about negotiation. I try to fancy myself as a good negotiator. I like to negotiate, because I think that, you know, when you are able to learn the tactics of negotiation, you're able to be a better communicator, especially if you want to work across the aisle or you want to work with people that don't think the same way that you do. And then the last book that I will recommend is Adam Grant's. He's a great behavioral psychologist. I'm a big geek of behavioral psychology books. And his book is called Think Again. And it's basically teaching you to rethink and think again. Sounds like basic critical thinking, but a totally different approach. The combination of those 3 books last year really changed the way that I viewed the world and approached communications and other people, and the way that I viewed, you know, issues and things. And I highly recommend those 3 books. I'm happy to send that as well as the name of the podcast to Michael, and he can send to all of you or Marianne. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for all those great recommendations for our audience. I hope you can all take something of what everyone said and apply that to your daily lives to make a bigger difference in your communities and inspire others that are in your shoes or were in your shoes many years ago that are, what I'm trying to say is are just getting started, right? Spark that interest to get civically engaged, no matter what your view is. Diversity is a beautiful thing. And in this country, we can do a lot of great things if we all work together. So I think we have just a few minutes until we get the flag for a Q&A. If anyone has a question, please raise your hand. I'm not sure if we're passing the mic, and we can ask a few questions of our panelists.
Hi, thank you for this very insightful conversation. My name is Luis Moros. I'm a junior at Florida International University doing a bachelor's in public policy and political science. My question was, as of right now in 2022, civics is the least funded subject in American history, which is $4 million compared to $54 per student. How do you transform civic education to prepare your students and our future generation to become active and engaged citizens? Because right now we're seeing a lot of classes about how to be civically engaged, but we're seeing a lack of civic engagement. So they take the exam, a civic literacy exam, from Miami in the state of Florida, we have a civic literacy exam that they have to take it before going to college. They take it, but we're seeing that they're not being actively engaged in our democracy. So how do we navigate that based on your experience?
Yeah. No, I used to be an ed policy guy. You know, there has been in public high schools, certain narrowing of the curriculum, more focused on science, math, English have become the big 3s. And unfortunately, that's led to an exclusion of other subjects. And near and dear to me is civics. And there also, you know, for a number of decades was an erosion of funding and people willing to run debate teams. And I think, those two in combination, and you throw in new technology, cell phones, online, that sort of stuff, has been very problematic for our ability to capably have discourse. I mean, we even have members of Congress who have important jobs, spending time just trashing each other, when they should actually be trying to govern and negotiate. I mean, pluralism, diversity, it's the fact of life here. Well, how are we going to get anything done collectively if we cannot understand the machinery, which is what you need civics for, but then communicate and bargain, negotiate, cut deals, and ultimately walk away being able to claim credit together. And I think our schools have gotten to a point where we're spending so much energy trying to focus on people to be really, really expert at technical things. I've got a 16-year-old son who can code. That's great. He can't talk to his parents about, what we're going to eat for dinner and have it be a productive negotiation. He's just not getting those skills. So yeah, I would think the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, that's a big funding bill. It gets done. That's something that needs to be inserted, and we're just going to have to start regrowing that in the schools. But mostly, I think not-for-profit and civic space is going to have to just keep leaning in here. I'm going to have to keep building that capacity to have conversations across communities and across individuals.
Okay, so I agree with the last statement, right? I think we're in the business of partnering with schools, partnering with school districts to do civic education in schools, right? So if you cannot have a full semester or a full term, at least, for example, there's places that have student voter registration day at the schools. In Florida, we are working with Valencia College and another school to do a back to school voter registration drives. So it's just those examples. Unfortunately, I don't see a solution on the horizon, right? Because you're talking about civics, but there's also, there's a whole contentious debate about what do we teach in history, for example, right? That's become a political pawn. So if that's going by the wayside, I don't have a lot of hope for civic education. But I think there are nonprofit organizations like what we do in our educational fund that partner with school communities to bring those services.
Do we have another question from the audience? That was a good question, by the way. Cool. I think we wrapped up. So I want to say thank you to our panelists. If we want to give them a quick round of applause, thank you so much for providing your insight and your thoughts today on this very important topic of civic engagement. So, Marianne.
I don't think we had a chance to take a photo, so I want to make sure we do that. I don't know if I have any of the other advisory council members still here, but why don't we go ahead and stand up and take a photo? And I do see, did I see our advisory council member? I didn't see him, right, Miguel? Can you come up? So I always include the bosses in the photo, so I don't get in trouble later. This is Miguel Mendoza with Amazon, formerly with Congressman Moya Diaz-Balart's office. So come on in the, yeah, just come on in the end here. All right. Perfect. We're gonna check out whose camera we got first. You're gonna do that? Okay. All right. Oh, this way, okay. All right, thank you. Thanks again. Thanks very much. Great job, Mari. So another round of applause for our panelists here for the civic engagement. To the question that was asked, Luis, thank you again for the question and for everyone else too, and for people watching. You know, I've mentioned before that in certain decisions that countries have made, the people that usually kind of get things going are students. Our students, college students, recent college graduates. So it's an opportunity. This is the exact case in point. There's an opportunity to get more involved. And if you see the value and the opportunity to contribute at the civics engagement level, to be able to do that. And you have that power to do that. You saw the people here, the different speakers that we've had throughout the day. There isn't a secret sauce that you have to be in a certain position to give input, or you have to know a certain person to go and talk to the member of Congress. Doesn't matter if you voted for that member or not. If there's an issue going on in your community, in your family, or that you feel is important, you have an opportunity here in this country to voice that opinion and that concern and that interest. Use that opportunity, because not a lot of other people your same age in other countries have that opportunity. So take that as well wherever you can, because a lot of things that have happened throughout our history have also started because young people just like you and some of us older ones in the room have spoken up and have advocated for others. I just wanted to share a story about, sometimes people ask me about how I got involved in education and working with college students and students. So I'm one of those, I think it was Neri and somebody had said in earlier. So when I had recently graduated from college, I'm the eldest of 5. I grew up in a farm worker camp in Stockton, California. My dad came from Mexico in the Bracero program. My mom's of Mexican heritage and was born and raised in Texas, grew up picking cotton. They met working in the sexy fields of Chico, California. You know, growing up in a farm worker camp, you kind of are discriminated against from the time that you're, you know, that you grow up there. You know, everybody else is the other, and for them, you're the other. And we had one year during the summer after the regular school year, we get a letter in English at the camp. And basically it said that starting that next school year, my sister Maggie, who's the baby sister in the family, was going to have to go to a different school. Of course, my mom, turns out, among all the other women that worked there, was the youngest, the only one who was American citizen, the only one who spoke English, and the only one who had a driver's license. So she was the best ever. Everybody wanted to talk to mom and needed a ride, talk to my mom. So everybody came to our family and said, what are we going to do about this concern that there's these kids that are not going to be able to finish their 8th grade year in the school that they started? Long story short, I ended up, some of you don't even remember this, I ended up typing a letter in my dad's old Royal typewriter, 3-page letter to all these elected officials complaining about what was going to happen, because I knew there had to have been something wrong. I knew that there was no way that you can just send a letter to parents in English, knowing they don't speak the language, having had nothing involved or notified before. They're just, you know, when it just doesn't feel right, it just, something's not right. So I wrote those letters, made a bunch of copies, sent them to the governor, the assembly, the state, you name it. I got a phone call about 3 weeks. My mom got a phone call. I didn't live at home at the time anymore because I was already graduated working. And she says, we got a phone call from a state senator of California. I'm like, okay, this is awesome. We're making progress. So turns out they were interested in what was going on. We found out that this principal in this school on the left, this principal on the right, their buses had been going to the same camp for years, but they never did anything about it. So they decided, you know what? From now on, you take these kids and I'll take those kids. Done deal. We don't have to say anything else. We just send them a letter. Well, turns out that that deal doesn't work like that. You can't just redistrict and send kids to wherever you want. It doesn't work that way. So we ended up in a situation where my mom and dad and I had to go to the school board. And if you can imagine, my dad and my mom were terrified because we're not supposed to speak up. We're supposed to go along with whatever we're told. We'll get past this. And I kept saying, this is not right. We've got to at least speak up. the president of the board of the student body, Michael Robinson. His daughter, Heather, was my friend, my sister Elvira's best friend. The vice president of the board, Michael Marquini's daughter, Marnie, was my other sister's best friend. So we already had relationships with people on the board and we didn't even realize it, right? So we ended up being able to make our case. We gave a recommendation, which is the other piece of the story. If you're really upset about something and you want to get involved with something, don't just be upset. Give a solution, give a recommendation, have information with you, because we all can complain. God, man, we're all good at that. But when you have to actually provide a recommendation or a solution, that takes it up a notch, right? Now you're being heard in a completely different way. And you're adding value instead of just complaining, which is also very different. So we ended up being able to present our case, gave our recommendations. It got back to the senator's office because I kept calling them and they kept asking me for information. A week before classes started, that same office called and said, we want to know if your sister gets picked up by the bus because we were notified that they didn't have a deal. They're going to follow your recommendation. And so everybody goes to the same school that they've been going to. They will phase in the process. And by the end of the next 2-3 years, the buses will be in completely different directions, but not until then. So the senator wants to know if your sister's not picked up by the bus, call us immediately because we will go to the school and we will make a big fuss about it. And I thought, this system works. Wow. So that's why I got involved. I got involved because I saw things that weren't working out in my own family that affected kids in my community growing up in a farm worker camp. So whatever tugs you, whatever gets to you, if it gets to that level that you need to speak up, do it smartly, get your information, add value, provide recommendations, and get allies. Find other people who are going to support what you're thinking about or what you're advocating for, because every time there's something that comes up, there's always allies. There's always somebody there who can help you get information, be of support. And again, you have a very, very honored opportunity in this country that you don't have, and your counterparts around the world don't have that same opportunity. So think about them as well when you have a thought about some injustice or something that you need to change. All right. Before we present this last award, I just want to let you all know we do have lunch in the next room. We're going to do a short little award ceremony here for a very important award and presentation. Then we're going to go to the next room for a buffet style lunch. We also have some partners who have information for you as well. So hopefully you can stick around for that. But next is a presentation of a very important award in the Chile family. I'd like to invite to the podium the person who's going to speak about this award in greater detail, but it's the Wendy Martinez Chile Community Engagement Award. We put so many words into it in the beginning. Right now, I'm trying to remember it. But Wendy Martinez was a young woman who was very involved in the organization. A couple of years back, we had the opportunity to recognize her. And we decided that we would conclude the Future Leaders Conference with the presentation of this award to hopefully inspire many of you, especially those that are current and future leaders, that you don't have to wait to be a speaker. You don't have to wait till you're a member of Congress. You don't have to wait till whatever time that you think you need to contribute, to add value to the community, and know that others are paying attention and are watching and are there for you and are advocates. So with that, please join me in welcoming to the podium the president of the Chile Alumni Association, Keith Fernandez. He's also currently at DoorDash, has been at Univision, and also worked with our Chile Madrina, who you met earlier, Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen. So Keith, thank you. The floor is yours, dear.
Thank you so much, Marianne. And I know I'm standing in between you and lunch, so I'll keep it short. So I'm honored to be presenting this award today because Wendy Martinez exemplified the best of us. She was a public servant at heart. She was somebody who believed in serving her community. In addition to being a founding member of the Chile Alumni Association, Wendy was somebody who pursued life's passions with vigor and with purpose. In addition to being chief of staff at Fiscal Note and going from serving the public to serving the public in business in a different way, she was an avid runner. She was passionate about her family. She was living a full and complete life, which was tragically cut short and senselessly cut short. As we think about Wendy and the meaning of community engagement, which is I think why we're all here today, we should honor those that, and we will honor those who are pursuing civic engagement and engaging their communities in new and exciting ways. Today, I'm really honored to present the Wendy Martinez Alumni Community Engagement Award to Brenda Villanueva from the Chile class of 2005. Brenda is an attorney. Brenda knew Wendy, and she's a founding member as well of the Chile Alumni Association, helping draft the bylaws that have undergirded our success to date. In addition to that, Brenda served our country in the U.S. House of Representatives. She served at the FCC, and now she serves at Turn advocating for California taxpayers who are facing utility bills and regulations. And she's, in addition to all those professional accomplishments personally, she's a guiding light for Chile alumni. She's been there to mentor them. She's there on panels. And Brenda is one of the success stories that I'm so proud to lift up and proud to really just continue to be in awe of. So I'm thrilled today to officially confer the Wendy Martinez Chile the Alumni Community Engagement Award on Brenda. So, oh my God.
It's a very heavy award,
Oh,
to
it's
mind
heavy,
you.
okay.
Yes. I want to also get Michael Manoy from the Alumni Association in the photo. Do we have?
Yes.
Go ahead and do your photo. And then we'll-
No, we did it.
Just move away from the podium and then that way we can, perfect. Does it fit here or where do you, let's see. Is that in your way?
No.
Okay.
Perfect.
It's very heavy.
I've been told. So thank you, Keith. I am so honored to be recognized for the Wendy Martinez Community Engagement Award. This is a special award for several reasons, professionally and personally, as Keith mentioned. I'll mention a few. Professionally, and this, actually, Marianne, you took a lot of what I was going to say. You know, community engagement and civics, as my young brother said earlier, it's so important for our community, but it can come in many forms, right? Marianne had a wonderful, very personal, touching story of how she was able to activate her community. I'll share one other one that I had with Wendy, actually. Our issue was we found that in our working in me in telecommunications, digital equity work, her in fiscal technology, right? Fiscal Note. We saw a dearth of Black and Brown representation in the rooms we were in, right? Be there younger or more executive senior rooms. And so we thought individually that this was a problem and what can we do to fix it? Here are two young Latinas in DC. How do we do something about it? Happened that we each individually met leaders from Latinas in Tech, and we asked, how do we bring Latinas in Tech, which is a nonprofit with chapters from all over the country, actually now in different regions of the world, how do we bring it to DC? Because there's so many young Latinas, young Latinos that are trying to claw their way into tech and telecom and media, but they just don't have that in. They don't know. We're relegated to certain roles, but we want to be seen as, in more senior leadership roles as well, right? Do what you a lot, I'm sure you hear it a lot today, is bring the elevator back down and fill it up, right? We wanted to do that. So that's how Wendy and I did something together where we saw a need, we had a solution, we brought allies together, just to use Marianne's mantra, and it worked. We have a great community now in DC, but we also are a recognized community across the country. I'm in the Orange County area in California, and I know that this thriving, growing community in the DC metro area is now recognized elsewhere, and we're seen as a resource. So that's one way. I mean, this was just something we did out of, we saw a need. We figured out how to get engaged. We found a solution to bring someone who's doing this as a model already, and we gathered allies. Another reason why this award is very important to me is that it goes along with what CHLI really drives, and that's diversity of thought. I happen to be in the world of broadband digital equity, and it started as more like intellectual curiosity for me. I'll date myself, but I can tell you my first computer and internet connection was AOL dial-up in high school. Okay, saying for those of you who but that was that to me that felt like a privilege at the time, because so many of my family members, friends, that wasn't the case. They were still like going to the library like I used to do, and so thanks to programs like E-Rate, that was facilitated, right? Just connecting. Things that right now we carry a connection on in our pocket or in our purse, right? And so the case now is, I love that I'm able to take something that, again, was more intellectual curiosity. I've been able to work on it and engage community of different, and it hasn't been easy. We're not all together. People have different solutions on how to bring more digital equity across the country, right? Not just where I am in California. And so this means a lot to me, because it's a recognition that there's community engagement across different issues. And that's what I want to convey here is if whatever moves you, you can do it from different roles, and you don't have to feel like your first step is where you will be forever, right? It's just, these are steps. And for me, it's been, Keith mentioned, it's been Congress, it's been at the federal regulator, the FCC, right? And now it's at a nonprofit. And all I do all day long is talk about digital equity at a regulatory level, which means I don't get to just be upset about an issue. I have to suggest regulations. I have to use persuasive arguments. I'm an attorney by training. And so that's the kind of thing that I have to do. The last thing I'll mention is this is very personal for me, because Wendy was actually a fellow participant with me in 2005 and my roommate for the program. So if you all have participated, now I know the program has changed a little, but back then we were all summer interns. It was a few weeks long, but I saw her when we were just growing up as young ladies, professionals in DC, when things weren't so open. We were still cracking a few ceilings here and there. And I think she really, as Keith mentioned, she embodied so much of what CHLI stands for. And we came from very different places. She's from Miami, I'm from Southern California. But I think we saw so much in common that we were able to do a lot. And I was really proud to be involved with the Alumni Association. And I'm really proud to see that it's grown, how much it's grown. And so I'll leave you with this. One thing that Wendy, besides everything you've heard of her, one thing that she strived to do is to create her own, she called it her own board. And her own board of directors. You hear about this concept, in the nonprofits, corporate setting, but for yourself as well. This is a collection of mentors, of sponsors that you could think out loud with, right? This is something Wendy did very well, and she taught me to do this more. She said, Brenda, we need to be out there more so that we can incentivize, our young people to follow steps that are not traditional, right? Or that they haven't seen before in their hometowns. So I'll encourage you to think, who's on your board? You have one. I promise you, if you're here, you already have one. You just don't call it this, right? But it's that group of people that you pick up the phone and you say, I have this new opportunity. Should I take it? Are there people like that in your life? If they're not, please see me and I will help you figure that out, because it's so essential for young professionals, especially at this level in this city, to have their own group, collective group that is thinking, helping them see what they can't see for themselves. My board is someone, folks that can see 5-10 years down the road that I can't see right now, right? They've guided me from Congress to going to law school, because that wasn't in my cards that I thought, and it turned out to turn really great, to being more in a federal regulatory role, right? And what that meant. And then to taking a challenge and being at a nonprofit, but working at a state and federal levels at the same time. Something that I didn't think I'd be doing, but because the mentors, they said, no, you can't. You already know, you just don't feel like you know yet. And those are the people you need. So with that, thank you so much to the Alumni Association. I really appreciate this award. And I think I hand it back to Marian.
I get emotional every time that comes up. Thank you. So now we're going to wrap up with food for everyone and some partners next door who, back to you, dear. So we have some partners next door with some information for you, some internship information, probably some other goodies as well. But very quickly, who likes to go to the movies? Who stays to the very end to watch the credits? Yes, somebody else believes in that. Okay, so I always stay to the very end of the movies and watch all the credits, because I figure everybody else on the screen deserves to be watched, just like the cool actors in the actual movie. So I'm gonna mention the credits for this conference because it wasn't just about me moderating or being up here. So let me finish with that name and the credits, and then I'll see you next door for some food and some networking. We've got a couple of people still here who are on the panels. Brenda's here, Michael's here, Miguel's here. I think we have our sponsor, Jennifer, is still here from Ford, who's also very involved in the community. So with that, let me run my credits. This conference would not be possible without the support of many people, including staff and interns. In alphabetical order, they are Ana Lucia Arguello, Vanessa Carter, Nicole Clavel, Christian Cubas, Janet Gordillo, Gabriel Lopez, Nicole Marin, Emily Martinez, Angelica Peralta, Maite Sanz, Ariana Stewart, and Mauricio Viacres. And a special mention to Mauricio. Tomorrow is his last day with Chile. He's going to stick around a few more days after that, but officially. And he's going to be heading back to Miami. So if any of you are in Miami, look him up when he's back in Miami. A special thank you and appreciation and gratitude for your service, for starting out during Zoom time when nobody knew what to do with Zoom and hanging in there. And now going into hybrid programs. So thank you for everything that you've done. Thank you for selecting the global leaders who you have selected over the last couple of years, who you've been also a mentor, maybe a board member in their life, but you just don't know it. So thank you very much, Mauricio. And with that, let's go have a little bit of fun and some networking. Thank you all and God bless.